This guy is freaking out, realizing he's been reborn as Kyunggu, the most useless character in the world, and before him stands Zeon Han, Noin, the girl who will become the Calamity Witch, burdened with the world's suffering, born with mutated DNA. She was an outcast, and he finally understood why she became the Calamity Witch. But after all this, he couldn't just die again for some ridiculous reason. From this moment on, Kyunggu is determined to stay by Han Noin's side, change her mind, and prevent her from going down a path of sin. However, the main story hasn't even begun yet, so Kyunggu's actions could change the future, from asking his teacher to move next to Han Noin to this very moment. There are still 5 years before the main storyline begins. So before joining the academy, Kyunggu is determined to become Han Noin's friend, guide her to the right path, and turn her from a calamity into a blessing. And so, with just a few simple words, Kyunggu entered the life of the mid-level boss. At first, Kyunggu was confused. If he had transmigrated into this world, why couldn't he see the status window? Even if he wasn't a player, he then decided to try opening his status window. And sure enough, it appeared before him. But upon reviewing his character's abilities, Kyunggu realized his stats were quite good, making him wonder why he was bullied at all with this kind of power. He shouldn't have to fear anyone. After all, this was a promising start to a good life, one that couldn't compare to his previous one. Returning home and seeing his gentle mother, Kyunggu immediately rushed to hug her, wanting to feel her warmth and love. Seeing her son suddenly so affectionate, his mother was concerned and asked if something was wrong. Kyunggu just snuggled up and said he missed her. Hearing this, his mother was no longer worried, and urged him to wash his hands and have a snack before sword practice. At this moment, Kyunggu was even more determined to do something to live as the real Kyunggu. Kyunggu represented the prestige of a sword family like his own, like a lion ruling its pride. It focused on swordsmanship, perhaps turning Kyunggu into a master swordsman in the future. Soon after, he headed to the sword dojo to train. In this world, sword dojos were opened in several cities, and those outside the clans would learn common swordsmanship instead of Beast King swordsmanship. Just then, an unexpected figure appeared, drawing everyone's attention. Geo Sion, known as the Thunder Flower Divine Sword of the Geo family. Kyunggu knew some basic information about Sion, such as that she was 2 years older than him, and the most anticipated prodigy of the Geo sword family's lineage. She would become a powerful swordswoman and a reliable ally to Geo Kyunggu. But for now, he didn't understand why she was at the sword school. Still, they'd meet later, so he didn't dwell on it, and immediately began practicing the beast sword techniques. After his flashy swordplay, he paused to rest, wondering if Sion was impressed. So, practice. But not really, mostly just showing off for the ladies. Meanwhile, his flashy swordsmanship caught the attention of 3 kids, Gugi Undong, Gu Undong, and Gu Zongdong, the Gu triplets, minor characters known as the 3-headed Cerberus, who bullied him because of his relative, Du Sion Gu. Indeed, upon seeing his enemies again, Kyunggu couldn't focus, not even bothering to answer them. However, they weren't the only reason waiting for him. What truly angered Kyunggu was how he could have allowed these 3 brats to bully him in his past life. Remembering everything that happened to the original Kyunggu, he surmises that the reason he didn't fight back against their insults and malice was because he was too weak and hated hurting others. But the current Kyunggu is not the Kyunggu of the past, and he realizes that his human body is not weak at all. And so, fearing no one, he immediately declared war on the 3 punks, demanding a real fight. Without another word, Kyunggu attacked, intimidating the remaining 2, his newfound strength a stark contrast to his former weakness. And they began to feel fear. But Kyunggu wasn't finished. He continued. Enough talk. Get up. This isn't enough to kill you. I've endured worse from you guys. The 3 are instantly terrified. Then threaten him. How dare you do this to us? Do you know who's behind us? Did they really think he'd let it go? Of course. Kyunggu knew who was pulling their strings, and their faces froze when they saw his reaction. Turns out, his cousin Songgu bribed those 3 by offering to sponsor their hunter training, in exchange for them bullying Kyunggu at the sword hall. But these 3 fools seem to have forgotten that Kyunggu is also a member of the Du family, so it would be easy for him to have their sponsorships revoked. The 3 of them must have been shocked that the usually weak Kyunggu was so strong, and just then, their teacher walked in, scolding them for fighting without permission. Kyunggu immediately explained that the Gu brothers had provoked him, so he was just defending himself, especially as a member of the prestigious Du family. Why would he be afraid of bullies? The teacher, seemingly unconvinced, asked if they had truly provoked Kyunggu. And the Gu brothers, intimidated, confessed their misdeeds. Of course, Kyunggu was pleased with this outcome, regretting he hadn't done it sooner, and vowing to give as good as he got, scaring anyone who dared to mess with him. The next day, Kyunggu arrived early and greeted Hanun before sitting at the desk next to hers. And to get closer to her, he tried to find topics to chat about, like joining the book club since Hanun loved reading. Soon, they found common interests and were happily chatting away. As they talked, Hanun was flustered, as it was the first time someone had actively tried to befriend her. She was also curious as to why someone from a prestigious family like Kyunggu would want to befriend a blind girl like herself. Hanun guessed that he was only curious about her being an esper, and would soon lose interest and abandon her like the others. Thinking this, Hanun became even more melancholy. Little did she know, Kyunggu genuinely wanted to befriend her, to save the world. Moreover, what he felt around Hanun wasn't aversion, but simply that she was like his cute bunny at home. Immediately, Kyunggu showed Hanun videos of it, which she found incredibly adorable. Seeing this, he invited her to his house. And though Hanun was going to refuse, Kyunggu's radiant smile won her over. Right after school, he took her home, and the massive mansion in the city center spoke volumes. His gentle mother warmly welcomed Hanun, giving her a strange feeling, because parents usually forbid their children from associating with someone like her. But Kyunggu and his mother were different. They didn't discriminate against her at all. Although she told herself Kyunggu's curiosity wouldn't last, she still didn't want to let go of his hand. Afterwards, the two had a light meal and played happily with Mongshin all afternoon. That evening, Kyunggu's father returned from work, and Kyunggu asked to spar with him after dinner, a request that delighted his father, who seemed to have been waiting for this moment. So Kyunggu explained that he wanted to know how much he'd improved, and even wanted to experience real combat. Kyunggu's father hesitated at the mention of real combat, but Kyunggu affirmed his determination to deal with a few monsters himself. Soon after dinner, father and son began their swordplay practice. He was curious why his usually meek son was suddenly so eager to train. Before they began, his father reminded Kyunggu not to rush, as he wouldn't be fighting real enemies on the battlefield just yet. However, Kyunggu was determined to enter the main headquarters of the family's sword academy within 5 years. Furthermore, he foresaw many crises while dealing with incidents outside of Kang and Beyond's main character, and to face them, he needed to master practical swordsmanship. Moreover, Kyunggu knew the other Du family children already had combat experience before even entering the academy, so he was already behind, and he needed to work harder to catch up. Seeing his son's unusual attitude, his father guessed that this was somewhat related to the fight at the sword hall. He heard that his son had fought at the sword hall and seriously injured another child. However, you said you did nothing wrong. Right. Hearing his father's question, Kyunggu was a little nervous, but he sensed his father was more interested in the truth than scolding him. So, he didn't hide anything, directly stating that he'd been taught to use the family's swordsmanship to protect himself and help others. So he was only doing what was right and felt no guilt. After all, Kyunggu was just defending himself, which is why he fought the Gu brothers. More than anything, he understood that he had to protect himself before he could protect others. So, he declared that he needed to take down some real monsters to gain more combat experience and courage. Hearing his son's words, his father didn't scold him, but was happy that his son had grown so much. And of course, he was always ready to help him, even with real combat experience. But he has one condition: Kyunggu must prove he's skilled enough to fight a real monster first. Of course, during their duel, he won't use mana, move more than 5 steps, or use anything beyond basic skills. No Beast King swordsmanship to keep it fair. And it seems Kyunggu understands his father's intentions to ensure he avoids harming innocents with his sword. So, he'll follow his father's instructions exactly, immediately launching a basic attack. Although his swordsmanship was technically sound, it initially seemed ineffective, until he switched to a more aggressive assault, forcing his father to take his first step back. Seizing the opportunity, he continued his relentless attack, and when his father revealed a slight opening, he struck. Even though he knew it was coming, the father was still a little hurt by his son's powerful strike, while Kyunggu naively thought it was the only way to show his true skill. Hearing his son's words, the father thought, "Well done, my son. I didn't expect you to dare hit your own father once you grew up." So, Kyunggu passed the father-son bonding test, and the very next morning, the two decided to hit the road. Despite mom's worries, his little sister was throwing a tantrum, begging to come along. But they stuck to their plan. After saying goodbye to their mother, he and his father got in the car to head to the family's academy for registration. According to the game's lore, the world began to destabilize after the cataclysm, with dimensional anomalies occurring frequently and devastating the world. Typically, monsters emerging from these rifts led to the formation of dungeons on the other side of space. When dimensional phenomena converged, a gate would open between the two dimensions. If these issues aren't resolved now, the world inside the gate will explode and scatter into reality, potentially triggering a cataclysmic event, with monsters invading and devouring humanity. Unlike dungeons, failure here would lead to further growth and severely impact the game's ending. Kyunggu must focus on the upcoming gate explosion and the growth of key characters. During the drive, Kyunggu's father mentioned needing to pick up a key from the warehouse first, reminding him that players receive a key after clearing a gate, created by the game developers to allow players to re-explore it. After a long drive, the two finally arrived at the agency where his father worked. Regulus Glen, Paju River branch founded during the cataclysm under the leadership of the Du family, as Kyunggunyo, and now, it has grown with branches all over the country. Besides dungeons, gates, and monster habitats, which are closely managed by the government, anyone who wants to enter those places needs to present a hunter's license. Kyunggu shouldn't have been allowed in, but his father was the branch manager, so he pulled some strings. What's more, Kyunggu is well loved by his father's subordinates, who shower him with affection every time he visits. Next, he and his father completed some administrative procedures to receive the gate key, which was white. In this game, the difficulty of the gate is determined by 7 different colors of keys. Starting with the easiest level, white, the difficulty increases with gray, yellow, green, violet, blue, and finally, the highest level, black. His father then led him to a room and explained that before him was an artificial gate, and inserting the key he'd obtained would open at a sight that overwhelmed Kyunggu with its grandeur. Even though it was just an artificial gate, he'd heard of families maintaining power through wealth. But only now did Kyunggu truly grasp the extent of his family's might and influence. Before Kyunggu officially entered a gate, his father asked one last time if he was ready to step onto a real battlefield. Think carefully, because once you step inside, you can't leave until the dungeon is cleared. Of course, Kyunggu is well prepared for today and has no intention of giving up. Seeing his son's determination, his father said no more and let him enter. Knowing he could always pull him out if needed, he just hoped his son wouldn't cause too much trouble. As soon as the gate opened, Kyunggu stepped inside, immediately overwhelmed by the dazzling, mystical scenery. At the same time, a system notification appeared, indicating he'd entered the white rank, Pink Crystal Cave. As he reviewed the information, he sensed movement nearby and readied his weapon, just in case. But before he could act, his father had already caught almost all the goblins in the dungeon, 15 in total, matching the system's information, meaning Kyunggu just needed to defeat them all to conquer the dungeon. Immediately, he told his father he was ready, so his father would release the monsters one by one for him to fight until the last one. Kyunggu's father even reminded him to be careful, even though they were the weakest in the food chain. But before he could finish speaking, one of the goblin escaped its restraints and attacked. Kyunggu reacted instantly. Assuming a defensive stance, his knowledge of the game and his family's swordsmanship gave him confidence. But caution was still paramount. He remained hyper-focused, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash a Beast King sword technique, instantly finishing off the root bin. Seeing his son's competence, his father breathed a sigh of relief. As a background character to the main hero, Kang Han-byul, Kyunggu has a limitation, a gift that influences his skills in this game. Kyunggu's gift is the instinct to flee, also known as the rabbit instinct situationally. It's a useless gift for him in combat, but when he senses danger and needs to evade, it should be a useful ability for a swordsman like Kyunggu. However, for some reason, the game system rejected this gift, and his timid, weak personality made him a perfect target for bullies. Because of this gift, the original Kyunggu was isolated and unwelcome in any group. Furthermore, the rabbit instinct gift made him resist the commands of real-life players, infuriating them to no end whenever they used the Kyunggu character. But everything changed after a bloody event truly awakened Kyunggu, and he became a completely different person. No longer as kind and weak as before, but our protagonist is Kyunggu, and he won't let that happen. He'll no longer rely on others for protection. From now on, he'll protect and save himself, fighting to the end for a better version of himself. In the original story, Kyunggu seizes control of the gift from the system after awakening, experiencing a dramatic surge in power, using his gift to evade attacks and seize opportunities to eliminate enemies. Back to the battle. He now faces 2 root bins at once, significantly increasing the game's difficulty. After all, he hasn't awakened yet, and in the setup, he's never seen any clues on how to do it. Kyunggu vaguely recalls the awakening, but figures it wouldn't hurt to try and force his own breakthrough. After a flurry of sword swings, he manages to take down a few. Bo tells him to rest, but he ignores the advice, wanting to push through to the end. With no other choice, Mr. Dan releases the remaining 4 root bin for him to deal with, but as soon as they're free, they scatter and hide, leaving Kyunggu bewildered. In that instant, Kyunggu felt a dark presence behind him, instinctively teleporting to the side. A powerful attack grazed his shoulder and shot off into the distance. It was then that Kyunggu came to his senses, hardly believing what had just happened. He guessed it must be due to his newly activated gift, sharpening his senses. From now on, he'd have to trust his instincts to deal with the 4 lurking goblins. Most importantly, Kyunggu had to act fast, eliminating them all to escape the dungeon, and he began using his gift to sense and pinpoint their locations. It was indeed effective. Soon, the goblins' ambushes were useless against him. Instead, he used their attacks to pinpoint their locations and strike 1 down, and noticing 2 more lurking below, he spun around, channeling mana into his sword to finish them off. Easy game. But seeing him so reckless, Bo became worried, advising him not to push himself and to take it slow. Still, Kyunggu wanted to keep wiping out the rest. And after a while, he finally completed the gate mission and immediately received his first white key as a hunter. Of course, Bo was overjoyed at his precious son's first achievement, though Kyunggu is a little disappointed he couldn't fully awaken his gift. More importantly, he's itching for a fight, immediately asking Bo if there are any other gates to clear. But just then, Kyunggu realized he couldn't use the dungeon to train anymore, because after the gate closed, all the remaining power inside would be wiped out, and only after mana replenishment was complete could the gate function normally again, so it couldn't help him at all right now. And to make matters worse, he still hadn't broken his limits to awaken. As he pondered, Bo approached and expressed his surprise at Kyunggu's battle today. He thought he'd stop at the 4 goblin soldiers, but he managed to take on 5 more alone. Honestly, that's commendable. He's definitely my son. Since there's nothing left to do, I told him to grab the key, open the gate, and head home. But Kyunggu didn't seem ready to go home, and he asked his father if he could try another gate, because he felt like he was on the verge of awakening, and it would be a shame to go home like this. Seeing his father waver, he pushed even harder. But in the end, his father couldn't agree. His wife would tear him apart if he came home late, and Kyunggu's father was deathly afraid of his wife. Still, he begged relentlessly, almost throwing a tantrum, and finally, a doting father like Kyunggu's couldn't resist and agreed. Being a swordsman himself, he understood his son's desire to conquer the challenge, but he would intervene if danger arose. Soon, the father and son arrived at Gate 3, which Kyunggu sensed was on a completely different level than the last, and his father warned him that not all white gates were the same, so he needed to be extra careful from now on. He even brought an assistant along, and dungeon assistants play a vital role for hunters, often providing healing or boosting strength when they're exhausted. So, his father bringing an assistant shows just how worried he is about him entering Gate 3. Sure enough, Kyunggu was attacked as soon as he stepped inside. Luckily, he sensed the danger and dodged in time. Otherwise, he'd be respawning again. At the same time, the status window popped up, announcing that dozens of monsters of varying strengths had appeared nearby. Kyunggu counted about 15 goblins, but these weren't the usual goblins from the previous gate. These were much stronger. Kyunggu thought, well, I'm screwed. One wrong move, and I'm done for. At this critical moment, his cowardly instincts suddenly kick in, and his gift begins to control his body, forcing him to run for his life, while his father and assistant observe his actions from above. The assistant, seeing the situation as quite difficult for an elementary student like Kyunggu, asks his father if he really intends to let him fend for himself. Of course, everything the father does has a reason, as he's noticed that his son has changed a great deal in a short time. In the past, Kyunggu was a very timid child, easily frightened by the smallest things. But recently, he's become much braver, almost a completely different person, reacting to surprises with indifference instead of fear. As a father, Kyunggu's dad is happy to see his son growing stronger, a welcome change. as he worried his gentle son wouldn't adapt to the Sword Clan's harsh environment, and he also noticed that because of that kind heart, he was always hesitant and afraid of hurting others, even putting himself in danger rather than harming someone else. In fact, Kyungu's father always cared for him and paid attention to him, and he never blamed him or forced him to become strong. So when his son suddenly changed this much, he was a little surprised and couldn't understand it. His wife said their son was different because he liked a girl in his class. But he didn't think it was that simple. There must be another reason behind it. He received a report from Kyungu's dojo that he'd gotten into a fight with some kids and even injured one of them. At first, he was shocked, unable to believe his gentle son could do something so violent. Yet the instructor dared to say that Kyungu's temper and fights with his classmates were due to the volatile nature and need to show off of young boys. That it was normal. Obviously, the instructor's absurd explanation completely infuriated Kyungu's father. So, he's only now learning that his son was bullied so badly he had to fight back. He can't believe Kyungu, a member of the prestigious Do family, was treated this way at such a small dojo. Someone must be pulling the strings, because no one would dare bully a member of the clan otherwise. Kyungu's father suspects the instructor was silenced, which is why he's only hearing about this now. Finally, the instructor confessed that the ones behind Kyungu's bullying were none other than Do Bamjun and his son, Kyungu's father's third brother's family, all because Kyungu's father lacked power and influence within the clan. Even when Kyungu's father called to question his brother about his son bullying Kyungu, he brushed it off, saying kids will be kids, and offered a half-hearted apology. Though furious, Kyungu's father was powerless to seek justice for his son. But amidst his helplessness, Kyungu underwent a sudden transformation, shedding his timid, weak demeanor for a stronger, more resolute version of himself. So, during this experiment at Gate 3, Kyungu's father decided to let his son try his hand without any support, to see how far his abilities could take him. Though it pained him to see his beloved son struggling against the monsters and getting hurt, he wanted to wait a little longer. But just as the monsters cornered Kyungu, his father couldn't bear it any longer and grabbed his sword to rush to his aid, asking his assistant to cast a magic shield to protect him. However, at that moment, Kyungu's father suddenly noticed something unusual. His son's eyes didn't look scared, but resolute, as if he were waiting for an opportunity. Before he could react, Kyungu unleashed the fifth form of the Beast King's sword, obliterating the surrounding monsters. He didn't stop there, continuing to evade the attacks of other monsters, but their teamwork is too good. Leaving no openings for attack, and running isn't a real solution. He's just rabbit bait at this point. So, Kyungu decides to gamble it all. Hoping his ancestors are watching over him, he turns, takes a stance, and prepares to counter with the first form of the Beast King sword technique. But the most troublesome thing right now is that Gif keeps controlling his body, not allowing him to do as he pleases. Especially since a mysterious voice keeps urging Kyungu to run away and find a place to hide, to save his life, and to stop fighting the monsters. Despite his struggle against the voice's manipulation and his attempts to regain control, he failed somehow and fled unconsciously, a feeling Kyungu must have experienced before awakening, as if his body were split in two, reason and instinct. Even so, while fleeing, Kyungu manages to control his cowardly instincts just enough to deal with monsters that ambush him. But dozens more are still hunting him down. Just as Kyungu catches his breath, a goblin shoots an arrow through his arm. And he's cornered. He's terrified, with nowhere to run, and bloodthirsty monsters closing in. Kyungu was so desperate, he thought he was a goner. But main characters don't die that easily. Just in the nick of time, the author granted Kyungu the skill to recall his past life. He's left to ponder his fate, what he's striving for each day, and why he was reborn as Kyungu. In his mind, who is the real Kyungu? Is it the scared, weeping, pathetic child before him? And just like that, Kyungu received a mental power boost from the author. No longer afraid, but now disgusted with his weaker self, he didn't want to be that pathetic. So, Kyungu completely refused to run. He had to overcome his fear and fight for his life, no matter what. In short, Kyungu was determined to go all in, fighting these monsters to the bitter end. Without hesitation, he charged forward, hacking them down like weeds, instantly taking out several nearby monsters before targeting the magic users in the distance, fighting with the boundless energy of someone who just had a blood transfusion and chugged a crate of energy drinks. Meanwhile, his father and assistant watched his counterattack in utter disbelief, unable to fathom how Kyungu had gone from terrified to ferociously combative in mere moments. The assistant couldn't help but ask, "Sir, what just happened?" Kyungu's father, still in shock, replied, "Oh, that's my precious son. I didn't ask you about that. I mean, how could he fight so miraculously? It's like my shield isn't even needed to defeat the monsters. Could all the family members do this? Even Kyungu's father couldn't be sure. Only noticing that he could predict the direction of all attacks and move nimbly to avoid them with ease. It was as if Kyungu was controlling his senses, making him wonder if he had truly awakened, or if it was his gift. Because to reach awakening, Kyungu would have to break his limits while identifying change. He unleashed a devastating move in Beast King swordsmanship, a special technique, Lightning Blade, to obliterate the monsters. The two adults watched in awe, marveling at the coolness of a mere 1-2-year-old. Kyungu's father was not only astonished but also immensely proud of him. After all, mastering the family's special technique, the Lightning Blade, isn't something a child can easily do so perfectly, even for a genius. Such a sudden burst of power is considered impossible. So, it's nearly impossible. Yet Kyungu pulled it off. Just then, a system window popped up, announcing that the hunter had cleared the dungeon. Kyungu also receives a notification that he has broken his body's limits, and his muscle, strength, and endurance stats have reached a new level. He's surprised to see his stats increase by defeating monsters, because in the game, physical stats were only supposed to increase through academy training. He figures it must be a minor bug in the game. Having experienced so much in this world, Kyungu no longer believes it's just a game, so he resolves to gather experience and become powerful. At that moment, his father finally showed his face, asking if he was alive, a father's warmth like the sun. Though he's cleared the gate, Kyungu is utterly exhausted and can barely move. His father isn't surprised, considering the earth-shattering feat he just pulled off. Your father was astonished to see you wield lightning. You may be the youngest in the family to ever do so. In truth, even Kyungu himself couldn't believe he'd pulled it off, because lightning infusion isn't just a sword technique. It's a physical phenomenon triggered by the Beast King sword style's unique methods. At that moment, mana and air would rub against each other, creating blue lightning. Of course, performing this technique requires certain standards, such as speed, posture, strength, and just the right amount of mana. Only when these factors are harmoniously combined can the swordsman succeed. So, it's no exaggeration to say that Kyungu is a sword genius, a precious seed of the Du family. However, Kyungu felt more worried than happy, because he feared he wouldn't be able to perform this move again. Hearing this, his father explained that because he had experienced blue lightning once, his body would remember it, and if he continued to practice diligently, he could do it again. Then, Assistant Hongshan returned to the father and son after collecting a lot of magic stones, but Kyungu's luck didn't end there. He then discovered something even more valuable than magic stones, a spirit stone. Though it was only low grade, he was satisfied. His father then told him to channel mana into the spirit stone to check its resonance, which Kyungu immediately did, successfully connecting with it, meaning his father couldn't steal it. All good things must come to an end. And despite wanting to continue exploring the gates, Kyungu is forced to attend school like any other elementary student. It turns out that after returning home, he fell ill from overexertion, and he still hasn't fully recovered. Because of this, his mother gave his father a good scolding, seeing how exhausted Kyungu was, and Hanoan was worried he was sick. Kyungu reassured him not to worry, explaining that he was just sick from fighting monsters the previous week, which only made Hanoan more concerned, unable to believe a kid like him would do something so dangerous. But for Kyungu and his clan, fighting monsters at a young age was commonplace. Kyungu might have even been a late bloomer. Kyungu felt a pang of sympathy, guessing it was due to her past bullying. And though he wasn't thrilled with the pink bandage, he thanked her for her sincerity. I told you, I'm really okay now. All my wounds have healed. If you want to help, you can remind me to take my medicine after lunch. Immediately, she eagerly asked if there was anything else she could do for him, as she would do anything he wanted today. Not wanting to be outdone, Kyungu said he wanted to hold Hanoan's hand. Hanoan was clearly taken aback by the strange request and reacted strongly, prompting Kyungu to apologize, fearing he'd gone too far. But even more shocking, Hanoan takes Kyungu's hand and places it on her own. Just a little touch. Okay. And so, for the first time in his young life, our boy touches a girl's soft hands, a feeling more intoxicating than any drug. Just look at the stars in his eyes. He's only allowed a little touch, and Hanoan is beyond embarrassed, especially seeing Kyungu's delighted expression. Kyungu then asked her if she wanted to become a hunter with him in the future, catching Hanoan completely off guard. However, Kyunggu assured Hanoan that she was talented. Because firstly, even though she was a demi-human, her physique was far superior to her peers. And secondly, he often sensed a large amount of mana that she unconsciously emitted, which meant that she had a great aptitude for using magic. Though Hanoan didn't fully understand, becoming a hunter seemed like a good path, especially since she'd have to leave the orphanage at 19. And as a demi-human, adoption was unlikely, leaving her to fend for herself. Becoming a hunter could provide her with a better life and a good income. But Hanoan was still afraid, as it wasn't a job for just anyone, and she didn't know if she could really fight monsters. Kyunggu reassured her, promising to always be there for her, and then asked if she would join him as a hunter, saying he believed in her and she should believe in herself too. Kyunggu's encouragement is a bit sudden, leaving Hanoan flustered. But even though it sounds far-fetched, it makes her feel like she can take on the world. Finally, Hanoan agrees to Kyunggu's invitation, and he immediately takes her hand, inviting her to attend middle school, high school, and the academy together, and even wants to take her to the sword school to cultivate her strength. Hearing about the sword school, Hanoan was confused, as she didn't have the money to attend. But Kyunggu told her not to worry about tuition, as her own family ran the school, so she could attend for free, and to let him, the great Kyunggu, handle anything else. Still, Hanoan couldn't understand why he was being so kind, especially since they had only just met and she hadn't done anything for him. Kyunggu, without hesitation, confessed that he was investing in her potential. That way, when she grows up and achieves success, he, as her sponsor, will get a piece of the pie. Hanoan is pleased by his honesty. Kyunggu explained that she would be training at the dojo, but not in swordsmanship rather, to strengthen her body, suggesting she also learn magic, sensing her aptitude, and promising to find her a teacher. And so, the two began training together, learning basic swordsmanship or strengthening their bodies at the dojo after school. While on days off, Kyunggu and Hanoan would train at home, nourished by Mama's delicious meals. Although Kyunggu felt things were going well, a little more motivation would help, and they'd need a magic tutor when she started learning. Actually, he already had a talented mage in mind. If only he knew where to find her Hongjena, the color witch. In this game, she's a guide, mainly teaching elemental magic at the academy, and probably still is. She's currently traveling, making her hard to reach, and despite Bo's help, there's been no word. So all he can do now is wait. As Kyunggu pondered, Mr. Bo suddenly appeared behind him. Startling him, it turned out that Mr. Bo had managed to contact Hongjena's representatives today. They agreed to visit within a month, but Hongjena won't teach Kyunggu if she's not interested in his skills. Of course, Kyunggu was prepared for that, understanding that without ability, he can't demand to be taught. Kyunggu wasn't sure about becoming Hongjena's disciple, but he was certain she'd be interested in Hanoan's talent. Meanwhile, Bo had some bad news, and his heavy expression suggested it involved the family. Indeed, he announced that Father's Day was next week, and according to tradition, the whole family would have to return to the main house. Wondering if Kyunggu was okay with that, because his jerk of a cousin, Zeonggu, would surely be there. So if Kyunggu didn't want to go, he'd go alone. However, Seunggu was the one who orchestrated the bullying by the Gu brothers, so he wouldn't miss this chance to confront him. In the end, Kyunggu agreed to go with his father to the main house, surprising him with his resolve. Father's Day arrived, and Kyunggu's family of 4 set off for the family's main residence. In the car, his father gave his children a stern warning. Kyunggu, keep an eye on Ie-eun and make sure she doesn't cause any trouble. And Eun, don't climb on the stone lions like last year. Okay, just behave yourselves. Please. For the sake of the whole family, he was especially worried about Kyunggu, even though he said he was fine with everything. Of course, he understood why his parents were so anxious and sensitive. Their family is never welcome, always ostracized and isolated at family gatherings. This time will likely be no different. But they must return to the main house nonetheless. The day before, Kyunggu was still training with Handwen, realizing that while he'd learned to control his instincts, it wasn't enough for the long road ahead. So he needed another skill suited to the current situation. The skill he chose was courage, allowing the user to resist the power and pressure of others. In combat, an enemy's aura and energy can often overwhelm. When faced with such pressure, a player's fighting spirit can waver and lead to defeat. But courage is the only way to resist, increasing focus and the will to survive when life is threatened. For these reasons, Courage is perfect for a timid person like Kyung-gu to learn. But the problem is he doesn't know where to acquire this skill. And its conditions are complex. In reality, the courage skill can be obtained by almost dying from an enemy's attack. But if you're not careful, you might actually die for real. In a way, it'll be easier while he's still relatively weak at controlling himself. The problem now is finding an extremely strong opponent who exudes overwhelming pressure, someone who seems malicious but won't actually kill him. After much deliberation, Kyung-gu finally found a prime candidate to help him acquire the courage skill. And this person was sure to appear at the Du family's main house on Father's Day. Soon after, Kyung-gu's family arrived, and after being shown to their rooms and given instructions by the servants, the parents decided to let the two troublemakers take care of each other. Then, Kyung-gu took Eon to see the main family's sword training hall. Indeed, everything here was top-notch and high class, completely different from the sword school he was attending. Even the wooden puppets for sword practice were made in Eon Seonamga, one of the 10 great families like the Du family. While Kyung-gu was showing his sister around, a cocky kid named Seon-gu appeared, looking for trouble. He probably thought Kyung-gu was still a pushover, so he was shocked to see him daring to challenge him like this. I'd be a lot happier if you weren't here. At this point, what's there to be afraid if Kyung-gu tears away this guy's facade in front of everyone? Unfortunately, I haven't been doing so well lately. Thanks to someone, I'm not sure how you did it, but I know you're the one behind the troubles of the 3 Gu brothers. Seon-gu was losing his composure, haunted by memories of being outmatched by Kyung-gu as a child, memories that fueled his father's toxic lessons: crush all rivals. Never lose. Especially not to Kyung-gu. From then on, Seon-gu grew twisted and hateful towards Kyung-gu, even brutally beating him during sword practice and orchestrating his isolation. On another occasion, this stubborn jerk mentally broke Kyung-gu by forcing him to kill an innocent rabbit. And when he refused, he beat him again. To this day, Seon-gu still believes Kyung-gu is no match for him, that he's just putting on a show, and will soon cry and run away as always. So Seon-gu challenges him to a fight to settle their score. But to his surprise, Kyung-gu readily accepts. His imposing aura, stubbornness, and fearlessness shocked him. While back in the lounge, Kyung-gu's parents were faring no better, forced to passively inhale nicotine from their gossiping relatives. In truth, neither of them enjoyed these family gatherings, especially Kyung-gu's mother, who, being an ordinary woman from a common family, was often looked down upon by the rest of the clan. Still, Kyung-gu's mother could endure anything, as long as her family wasn't hurt, which deeply moved Bo. And to make his wife more comfortable, Mr. Bo used his mana to create an air barrier, so she wouldn't have to breathe in the cigarette smoke. Just then, Kyung-gu's father's deadbeat brother, Jo Boomjun, suddenly appeared and broke the couple's peace. Sangjun, it's been a while since Kyung-gu's incident. Hasn't it, like father? Like son, he's already being sarcastic and itching for a fight. He deliberately brought up Kyung-gu's bullying in front of his mother, feigning concern. But this hypocrite only rejoices in others' misfortune. After listening to his nonsense, Kyung-gu's father couldn't hold back any longer and brushed his foul hand aside, making it clear that he wouldn't tolerate this. Apologize, tell Seung-gu to talk to Kyung-gu directly. This is kid stuff. It's ridiculous for an adult like you to interfere. Kyung-gu's father's words clearly angered him. But before either could say more, someone rushed in with news that Kyung-gu and Seung-gu were about to fight. A prospect Jo Boonjun found delightful, certain Kyung-gu would be beaten to a pulp. Just like before, fueled by the camaraderie of his drinking buddies, he was even more excited to witness Kyung-gu's defeat, mock him, and shame his family, not forgetting to remind Kyung-gu's father of his own words about letting the kids handle it themselves. Kyung-gu's father was itching to intervene, but he knew his son was different now, and this could be his chance to defeat his bully. However, his biggest fear wasn't the fight, but his wife's reaction. Indeed, Mom was furious that her good husband had kept this a secret from her. And when she's mad, no one can save Kyung-gu's dad. After a loving slap to her husband's face, they both rushed to the training grounds to save their son from injury. As Kyung-gu and Seung-gu's battle raged on, seeing Seung-gu relentlessly attack Kyung-gu's vitals, his mother anxiously warned him to be careful. However, Kyung-gu unexpectedly targeted Seung-gu's weak spot and delivered a devastating kick. Meanwhile, in the main house, Sugwang, the head of the Du family and grandfather of Kyung-gu, Yi-eun, and Seung-gu, had just finished bathing and was preparing to see his grandchildren when a servant informed him of the conflict between the two young boys. He was already aware of the issues between the two families, but it seemed things were still quite noisy. Even in the main house, he asked the servant for more details. Surprised that his usually timid grandson had accepted his cousin's challenge, this unusual turn of events piqued the old man's interest, and he immediately wanted to rush to the training grounds to witness the youngsters fight. Meanwhile, everyone was speechless after witnessing Sungu get knocked out in one hit, while Kyungu was bored because the fight ended too quickly. Moreover, easily defeating Sungu like this didn't satisfy him, as he had been severely bullied and oppressed by him for years. But Seungu absolutely loathed Kyungu, and in the game's original story, he would bully him relentlessly, driving him to depression and self-doubt for 5 long years. When Kyungu entered the academy, where Kang Han Bi-eun was studying, he finally escaped Sungu's bullying, because Kang Han Bi-eun would appear as a savior, defeating Sungu and rescuing Kyungu as an ally. But in other scenarios, Sungu plays a key role in fostering the friendship between the main character, Kang Han Bi-eun, and the supporting character, Kyungu. So without Sungu, Kyungu might never have become friends with Kang Han Bi-eun. Even so, he was still very disappointed with this anticlimactic ending. Then, unwilling to accept it, he shook Sungu awake, telling him not to play dead. I haven't even begun to settle the score for what you did to me. Seeing him stubbornly refuse to wake up, he grabbed his collar and dragged him up, but little did they know, he was really unconscious, and had even wet himself. Just then, Boomjun and his wife leisurely arrived. Still Smoog, thinking Sungu had gotten the better of his cousin, but the moment he saw his son beaten so badly, he wet himself. He couldn't laugh anymore, rushing over and physically assaulting Kyungu. How dare you do that to my son? Of course, Kyungu's parents weren't about to let their precious son be bullied like that. What the hell do you think you're doing to my son? What kind of nerve do you have? Doing that to a kid? Are you crazy? Don't think I'm afraid of you just because you're older. Kyungu's father immediately charged in, and a fierce war of words erupted, even involving their familial ties. Kyungu was speechless at the scene, and asked his mother to stop them, but she was already pulling hair and fighting with Sungu's mother, and even his first-grade sister joined in the fray. Having never witnessed such madness, Kyungu could only stand by silently until the family's most powerful figure, his grandfather, spoke up, bringing everything to a halt. Of course, seeing his descendants acting like wild animals, the patriarch immediately reprimanded them, saying, "Look at this mess. You dare call yourselves members of a prestigious family. I'm ashamed to witness this spectacle." His grandfather then asked what exactly was going on, but silenced Boomruan, insisting on hearing the story directly from Kyungu. Kyungu, your grandfather is asking you what exactly is going on here. No wonder he's the world's top swordsman, the powerful head of the swordsman family. His grandfather's words and pressure felt like facing a solid mountain. If his mind wasn't strong, he might have wet himself. Then, he tried to brace himself to keep calm before his grandfather's imposing presence, admitting that he started the fight and won. Hearing this, his grandfather withdrew his aura and asked Kyungu how he managed to win, or if he had used any tricks or schemes, to which Kyungu honestly replied that Seungu had lost his balance after being kicked in the ribs. He exploited this, striking the back of his head and knocking him unconscious. He could ask around for more information. Not stopping there, his grandfather pressed Kyungu on why he touched Seungu after he was already unconscious. He nervously explains that Seungu wasn't responding, so he just wanted to check if he was okay. But really, he was just getting back at him for all the past bullying. Hearing this, his grandfather doesn't punish him, but seems amused by the young punk's fighting. At this point, Jo Boom-jun's parents were desperate to explain, but the grandfather ignored them and directly ordered the boy, Seungu, who was pretending to be unconscious, to get up and speak clearly. Cornered, he had no choice but to sit up and admit that Kyungu had fought fair. With everything now clear, the grandfather scolded Jo Boom-jun's family before leaving, reminding Kyungu that after the party, he'd like to test his skills in a sparring match. Be well prepared, because I'm looking forward to that day. These words from his grandfather signified the head of the family's recognition of Kyungu's talent before the entire clan, leaving Jo Boom-jun's family to leave in silence. Things seemed to have settled, but for Kyungu, it was far from over, as Bo's loving smile hinted at something more. Indeed, mother and son had a serious talk about the bullying Kyungu had endured, and even his fight with Seungu. Her cold demeanor, so unlike her usual self, made him tense, stirring up terrible memories of his two-faced mother, the one who would often get drunk, scold, and beat him throughout his childhood, only to realize her mistakes when sober, hugging him and crying apologies. Though his mother treated him poorly, they were all each other had. so Kyungu always forgave her, even begging her not to leave him. But in the end, she abandoned him with a lie that she would make money and come back for him. At only 10 years old, Kyungu found those words so sweet, waiting for the day his mother would return. But reality is cruel, and even knowing this, he refused to accept it, pretending to believe her. After that, Kyungu lived a life of indulgence, devoid of light, future, or hope, sometimes thinking about the mother who abandoned him. Even now, those memories haunt and linger in Kyungu's mind, especially when faced with his current mother's questions. He was terrified, wondering if he should beg for forgiveness, let her hit him like his previous mother did to vent her anger, or apologize for being born. But Kyungu was overthinking it, because his current mother didn't blame him at all. Instead, she embraced him warmly and sincerely apologized for not noticing the bullying and for letting him suffer such unpleasant things recently. Her anger earlier was only because the two of them hadn't told her the truth. Feeling his mother's love and warmth for the first time, Kyunghu is taken aback, realizing that his current life is nothing like his past one, and he no longer needs to fear. Of course, he doesn't have to endure everything alone anymore, because now he has his real family by his side, a father, a mother, and a little sister people who will always love and support him unconditionally. Finally, understanding his mother's feelings, Kyung hugged her and apologized for hiding the bullying. But when the little sister, Yeun, started crying and jumped into their mother's arms, and then the father wanted a hug, things got weird. The mother and daughters were frozen in disbelief, while the father, hurt by their reaction, insisted on a hug, crying, "Geaea, don't you love me anymore?" Meanwhile, Kyunggu received a text and photo from Hanon, who seemed to be having just as much fun. It's safe to say that Kyunggu was grateful to God for giving him a second chance at life, thanks to the precious things he had now. However, as the family enjoyed their time together, a servant suddenly knocked, informing them that the party was about to begin and they should quickly prepare to go to the hall. Elsewhere, Kyunggu's cousin's family received a similar notice from their servant. Arriving at the grand hall for the evening's banquet, Kyunggu was astonished by the opulence and luxury befitting a prestigious swordsman family with over 200 years of heritage. He quickly estimated that with 7 direct family members and 5 branches of relatives, there were about 48 members of the clan present. Just then, Jo Bunjin's family arrived at the party, perhaps because the three of them often flaunt their arrogance. Many people seized Eungu's humiliating defeat to mock them. The wagging tongues of the world are relentless. Had Kyungu lost today's spar, his family would have suffered the same fate. Soon after, the grandfather appeared and silenced the gossiping crowd, declaring that everyone was present. It's wonderful to have even more people attending this year. Now, you must all be hungry. So let's begin the dinner party. Next, everyone was served exquisite dishes and enjoyed them together. There's a reason the So family outranks other noble houses. It all began after the Great Cataclysm, when the world nearly collapsed into a dark age, and humanity desperately needed divine protection. So, the noble families, seeking to consolidate their power, created certain abilities and a unified ideology of subservience to achieve their goals. And so, hunters were born to save humanity from extinction. But they were few in number and difficult to train. Thus, some began investing in elite human resources to protect humanity's safety. As a result, the 10 great families, including the Sword family, leveraged this to gain widespread influence in many fields. Intermarriage between these families was seen as an effective way to cooperate and maintain superior genetics. That's why Kyunggu has so many grandmothers. His father was the son of the 4th grandmother, who passed away long ago, and he was the 5th of his grandfather's 7 children. Kyunggu already finds it annoying just hearing about it, let alone managing a large family and overseeing all the family affairs. So he really admires his grandfather in these respects. Of course, his grandfather had many grandchildren, but he seemed particularly interested in those who stood out, like Xian, who had created lightning while still in high school, a feat so unbelievable that the family gossiped about it until his grandfather silenced them. Grandpa predicted that if Xian continued to train with lightning at this pace, she would soon be the youngest person after the 2nd-generation head to achieve this feat. So he sincerely hoped she could become a leader who surpassed even him. Her composure was truly impressive, even under grandfather's pressure. She remained calm, unwavering, and fearless. Kyunggu, observing from the sidelines, couldn't help but marvel at the sight. But then, Xian suddenly stared at Kyunggu, leaving him bewildered. At that moment, her grandfather unexpectedly mentioned someone, saying Xian's growth reminded him of news about a 2-faced demonic figure from not long ago. Immediately, Kyunggu realized the person his grandfather was talking about was none other than the demonic fighter, Xiao Zongjin, who lived in his grandfather's era, more importantly, the master of the protagonist, Gang Hanbiul. Therefore, Kyunggu could never forget this. Also knowing that Xiao Zhongjin was a character who would appear in the game's prologue. Specifically, Xiao Zhongjin stumbled upon Kang Hanbiul's talent at the orphanage and took him as a disciple until Kang Hanbiul turned 17, left his master's side, and enrolled in the Ji Honggang Academy. This marks the end of the game's prologue. Meanwhile, everyone was shocked to learn that the infamous demon duelist had taken a 1-2-year-old orphan as his disciple. Grandpa then explained that Xiao Zhongjin disliked being tied to the great families. So he took in a child with no background as his disciple, but he was particularly interested in seeing whose disciple was stronger, his or the Du family's. Though clearly a childish provocation, Grandpa couldn't ignore it, as the Du family swordsmen fear no one. Thus, Grandpa eagerly anticipates his young protege showing the world the spirit, strength, and talent of the Du family. This was the challenge the young warriors had to accept, promising to meet their grandfather's expectations. Judging by the situation and his grandfather's fighting spirit, Kyunggu guessed that the demon gladiator had provoked every major family. So why was that rabbit, Kang Hanbin, getting so much attention from the noble families as soon as he enrolled? Just then, Sunggu stood up and boldly declared that he would not only meet his grandfather's expectations, but exceed them. Just as his father had taught him, even if a lion hunts only a rabbit, it must give its all. He would give his all in the battle, no matter who the opponent was. Kyunggu chuckled at the rookie's nonsense, knowing that in the original story, he would be defeated by the Kan Bian, tarnishing the family's reputation. But his grandfather noticed Kyunggu's reaction and immediately asked what was so funny. Well, screw it. He has to speak his mind. It's Sunggu's words, not his grandfather's, that made him laugh. Does a real lion really use all its strength to hunt a rabbit? He finds that strange. If a lion has to exert all its effort to hunt a rabbit, isn't the lion the one in trouble? If that's the case, the lion must be quite weak, wouldn't you say? So, the way he spoke with such confidence just made me laugh. Kyunggu thought he'd be scolded by his grandfather for talking nonsense, but he didn't expect him to be so delighted. He even praised him for his fresh perspective and said he would reflect on what he said today. Kyunggu didn't understand a thing, but seeing that his grandfather seemed to agree, he just went along with it, ignoring the resentful glares from Ungu's family. But the night wasn't over yet. Because Grandpa had a very important announcement, he decided to hold the evaluation match inside a gate. As expected, his words sent shockwaves through the family. They couldn't believe he'd send children into a gate. Furthermore, he believed that for the descendants of a swordsman family, white gates were nothing, and if they were going to play, they had to go all out. So he chose a gold gate for the evaluation match. Soon after, everyone gathered before the golden gate, ready to enter the fray. Since this is a one-life game, before letting the little tryhards enter, Grandpa gave one last chance for anyone to back out of the evaluation match. Speak now, or forever hold your peace. Then, seeing no one speak up, Grandpa opened the gate and let all his descendants enter without hesitation. The golden gate they've entered leads to the great forest of Leader 4, and Grandpa immediately declares the evaluation battle begins. Explaining the rules first. Descend this cliff, then follow the gate's instructions. Traverse the forest, and reach the lake at its center. In that distant lake lurks a level 3 monster, rarely leaving the water. So hunting, it means fighting underwater. Hearing that, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, especially Kyunggu, since he wasn't even a student at the academy yet, and fighting a monster underwater would have been too difficult. But it seems he celebrated too soon, because Grandpa continued, compared to your level, the hunters have weakened and sealed the monster to prevent it from diving. It's significantly weaker and will stay on the surface, making it relatively easy for you. Right. So, it's easier than expected. Kyunggu then began to assess the situation, realizing that dealing with the leader wasn't the only problem. The lake is quite a distance, and exhausting everyone would be a real problem. But Grandpa reassured them that the hunters had eliminated most of the dangerous monsters. He also distributed recording necklaces to each of them, allowing real-time observation, along with a gate watch that monitored mana and heart rate, ensuring hunters could quickly locate and assist them if they encountered trouble. And throughout the assessment, everyone must wear these, so don't damage them. The match will last 3 hours, so set a timer as soon as you put them on. Once a monster is defeated, the one who contributed the most will receive a gate key and must give it to a nearby hunter before leaving the area. After Grandpa thoroughly explained everything, all the kids in the clan stood at the cliff, ready to enter this assessment match. Before he truly began, Kyunggu's grandparents told him to be careful one last time, and he promised to return to them soon so they wouldn't worry. Soon after, the referee fired a shot to signal the start of the match, and some were immediately eliminated for failing to climb down the cliff. Of course, it wasn't easy for Kyunggu, but he reassured himself not to be afraid, trusting his instincts to guide him, and using mana to absorb the shock of the fall. With limited time, Kyunggu decided to rush through the forest to the lake, but his danger avoidance instinct was suddenly triggered. It turned out he had encountered a pack of bag-carrying ape monsters, a species that specializes in attacking by throwing objects at enemies. Kyunggu braced himself. Though they were many, they didn't seem too dangerous. He realized once they ran out of projectiles, they were just aggressive apes, and with his talent, defeating them would be no problem. But once they're out of projectiles, the apes will flee, making pursuit difficult. So Kyunggu hesitated, unsure how to retaliate. Just then, he seemed to have an idea, and immediately used his sword to deflect the stones back at the pouch apes. Sure enough, this tactic worked wonders, and he pressed on, striking them down until they fell like flies, leaving none standing. After more than half an hour, Kyunggu managed to wipe out the entire band of bag monkeys, but his stamina and mana were now quite low, making him a little worried about the long road ahead. Fortunately, Kyunggu stumbles upon a life fruit in the hands of an ape, making things easier. Meanwhile, the parents are monitoring their children's progress on the screen. Everyone feared for the children's safety because the evaluation was so difficult, except Du Bum-jun, who was still bragging about his son to the grandfather. Just then, Xian's screen showed her unleashing a 4 lightning strike combo of the Beast King's sword art attack fist, stunning everyone, including the grandfather. However, the grandfather was concerned about how much stamina and mana the kids had used so far, and how much they would have left to hunt the boss. Suddenly, a loud noise caught his attention. Kyunggu's screen showed him smashing the kangaroo-like creatures like baseballs, leaving the grandfather bewildered, wondering what the heck the kid was doing. The parents were speechless, wondering what he was thinking, while Du Bum-jun was clearly delighted. Unbelievable, it seems Kyunggu is having fun. Please admire our Ungu's skills, master. However, his nonsense fell on deaf ears, because with his keen, worldly eyes, the grandfather immediately recognized that Kyunggu was dodging all the monster's attacks, while also counterattacking. Effectively, it seemed he had been trained quite well. Despite the old man's words, he stubbornly nitpicked at the boy, as if everything was harmless. What exactly did Sangjun teach him? The boss was itching to retort, clamping his mouth shut, wondering if his son's eyes were just for show, or if his brain was the problem. As the young master, how could he not know what Kyunggu had eaten? Of course, the grandfather knew he was eating stamina fruit and energy fruit, and praised Kyunggu's father for raising his son so well. He even sensed that Kyunggu seemed very knowledgeable about the bag monkeys, acting just like a professional hunter, capable of adapting to difficult circumstances. In truth, Kyunggu's father never taught him any of this, but he can't exactly argue with his grandfather, so he bears it. Meanwhile, Kyunggu continues to eat the fruit he took from the kangaroos, even though they don't taste very good. Luckily, he's near the lake and has recovered his strength with the fruit. He's also gathered a bunch more to keep in reserve, but it'll be hard to carry it all, and someone might take it if he leaves it behind. So, he decided to leave them in a carabun's fur pouch and continue on his way to the lake. Having wasted too much time gathering fruit, Kyunggu had to speed up using mana, but to his surprise, the carabuns were still chasing after him. So, he's forced to stop and quickly deal with them. But the environment has changed, meaning the monsters that appear will also change. Sure enough, he encountered 4 carabuns Hesukana, a powerful monster, guarding the only shortcut to the lake. Kyunggu realized that fighting here would be a disadvantage in this humid environment. The monster's speed has increased, and while the mucus in their mouths isn't highly poisonous, it can still cause paralysis. First, he needs to find an antidote, which he heard is usually located near their habitat, just in case. After wandering around for a bit, Kyunggu finally found the antidote and immediately ate it. Just then, a piercing scream suddenly rang out. Startling, Kyunggu, someone seemed to be facing monsters over there. Not only that, it's a red caro, a dangerous level 2 monster. And Kyunggu notices the person is paralyzed and can't move, and now a whole bunch of gloomy caros are coming. This guy's only hope is a miracle. Inadespérate gamble. Kyunggu decides to risk it all to save the young man. Leaping from a high place and unleashing the seventh form of the Beast King sword-style lion's latent lightning strike, obliterating the monsters. Fortunately, that last strike drove them all away. Kyunggu turned to check on the young man, only to discover that the person he'd risked his life to save was none other than Eungu. Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. Kyunggu froze the moment he saw his face. Now, he regretted saving this wretch. Not only was he ungrateful, but he was also rude and disrespectful. Even if you hadn't come, I could have handled it myself. You stole my prey. He even had the audacity to demand compensation for his losses. I can't even begin to understand what this dog is barking about. But everything in this world has its consequences. And soon enough, the boy will pay for his ignorance. There's still one Karo left. And this time, Kyunggu won't interfere, leaving it for him to handle. There's no other way. Eungu. This is my way of returning the favor. So you can take care of it yourself. I won't interfere with your work anymore. After such a provocation, Kyunggu runs off, leaving Eungu to deal with the monster. Meanwhile, everyone at the starting point witnessed the whole thing and was pleased with Eungu's fate. Karma's AB times THA. But Bumjun is just like his son, complaining after stealing, unable to stand, seeing others succeed, and then running away. Master, we must apprehend Kyunggu and punish him immediately. Abandoning Eungu while he's injured goes against the family's teachings. Of course, a wise man like the patriarch wouldn't listen to his nonsense, and instead asked Kyunggu's father for his opinion. Kyunggu's father felt this was common in competitions, and the kids knew hunters were on standby in case of emergency. They must be joking around. Besides, Eungu said he could handle it himself without Kyunggu's help. So what's the fuss? In the end, Grandpa sided with Kyunggu's father, and everything was as clear as day. So there was no need to say more. There was only one thing that bothered his grandfather. He thought he'd seen Kyunggu use lightning magic earlier. Meanwhile, Kyunggu arrives at a different environment, traversing most of the forest until he reaches a lake. He immediately assesses the situation, noting that there are 5 people present, including himself, and none of them seemed to have any experience fighting underwater. But what surprised him most was the sight of Seung fighting the monster. Its condition wasn't good. He guessed the previous hunters had drained its energy, and with this level of power, Seung could probably take it down. However, this monster isn't alone. It's called in reinforcements to gang up on Seung. And to make matters worse, she seems to have been poisoned by paralysis in the forest. At this point, Kyunggu really doesn't know what to do. He's not sure if he can face a spirit-level monster in this condition. With his current abilities, he could easily dodge every attack. But that would quickly drain his stamina and mana. The best course of action now would be to cooperate with everyone to fight. But he's afraid they won't listen to him. So for now, he wants to conserve his stamina and slowly come up with a plan. Meanwhile, Seung was showing signs of exhaustion and paralysis. In this state, she couldn't get any closer. But leaving now felt like a waste after coming this far. So, Seung decides to go all in, unleashing the 6th form of the Beast King sword style, Lion Dance, and the 3rd form, Lion Slash, to eliminate the surrounding low-level monsters. But suddenly, her sword hand goes numb, just when things couldn't get any hotter. Seung receives a telepathic message: "I'll attack on the right. You take the left." Immediately, her body moved on its own, following the voice's command, and the two worked together seamlessly to eliminate the monsters. At first, Seung didn't recognize the person, but when she looked closely, she discovered it was Joki Eungu. What's more, he even took the initiative to ask her, the new girl, to team up. She was so shocked she couldn't even speak that cowardly Joki Eungu. Seung didn't immediately agree, asking him to discuss it elsewhere. Meanwhile, back at the starting point, everyone realized the examinees were struggling in the final stage. Even with the leader weakened, it seems it's still too much for them. Look at them struggling. They lack real combat experience in a water-filled environment. More importantly, there are too many monsters around, making it difficult to get close. Even for Seung. Seeing the kids losing morale, Gujun, the eldest son of the noble swordsman family, had no choice but to ask the head of the family to reduce the difficulty of the match. And even the parents around agreed with this idea. Initially, Grandpa felt this level was too much for them, considering their age, the oldest being 17. They'd done well enough, but thinking of Yu Gui, Xiao Zhongjing, and Kang Han, Bai Yun, of Han's genius disciple, Grandpa was unwilling to accept defeat at the hands of that missile digger student. However, in the end, Grandpa agreed to lower the difficulty of the evaluation for the safety of the kids, though he still hoped Ki Won-gu and the others would find a way to defeat the monster. Meanwhile, Ki Won-gu's offer of cooperation was met with scornful rejection by the others, but Se-eon surprisingly agreed, stating he couldn't face the monsters alone, and Ki Won-gu had what they needed, luckily. Had fed Lostko a life fruit, making things easier to negotiate. Ki Won-gu then presented a pile of healing items, leaving the others wide-eyed, and made his intentions clear. He wasn't asking for free help. If you cooperate, I'll give you these. Don't you all want to be strengthened? Besides, if he wasn't the leader, who would be? Everyone but Ki Won-gu was nearly exhausted. They were too young to take on that monster. They must have been thinking that if they just had a little more strength, a little more mana, or weren't paralyzed, they could have done better. Oh, he knew all along about these petty thoughts of the young and inexperienced. So, Ki Won-gu didn't hesitate to give them healing items, so they could all work together and prove to the adults watching that they weren't an embarrassment. After that, everyone agreed to help Ki Won-gu and ate the vitality fruit to recover. But Won-gu's sorry self was still alive and kicking. Ki Won-gu just smirked at his pathetic face and handed him a vitality fruit. The guy snatched it up and devoured it like a starving animal. Completely shameless. Ki Won-gu wasn't thrilled, but more manpower was better. So he bit his tongue. Then, seeing that everyone had gradually recovered their strength, he explained the specific plan. Se-eon would take the right flank of the leader, while he would take the left, because he had noticed that the leader's left arm was seriously injured, so it wouldn't be able to defend well. Moreover, Se-eon is stronger, making her perfect for the right flank. With that, Ki Won-gu signaled the attack, observing the situation to coordinate everyone effectively and prevent chaos. While the others cleared a path through the smaller monsters, Ki Won-gu and Se-eon charged towards the leader, successfully wounding it, but the beast retaliated against Se-eon. Fortunately, she reacted in time to dodge, then used the recoil to leap into the air and unleash the third form of the Beast King's swordsmanship, Lion's Might, attacking the monster head-on. Not stopping there, as she retreated, Ki Won-gu charged forward, continuing with the first form of the Beast King's swordsmanship, Lion's Fury, but this time, Sukuna dodged his blow. He realized its agility made it difficult to approach, but they had the numbers advantage, so there was no need to rush. Then, he and Se-eon worked together, landing a few basic hits to weaken it. However, their attacks were shallow due to the thick scales, while the Silvermane wounds bled profusely and healed slowly, leading Ki Won-gu to believe they could secure third place by simply stalling until time ran out. Beautiful as the rain may be, Ki Won-gu almost met his maker due to a moment of carelessness, thankfully. His ancestors' gym habits saved him. Now, the leader monster has completely lost it, deciding to take Ki Won-gu and Se-eon down with him in a final desperate act. Of course, they weren't foolish enough to just stand there and take it. Meanwhile, back at the starting point, everyone was closely watching every little detail of the match, assessing the situation. Seeing his grandchildren work together so well fills the grandfather with joy, while Bumjun expresses his utter disgust, refusing to believe that Ki Won-gu can fight on Se-eon's level. But he's quickly slapped in the face by reality, because not only Se-eon, but also Ki Won-gu, have activated Azure Lightning and Death Contemplation, shocking the entire family. It was then the grandfather realized that more than one of the youngsters was capable of this. Perhaps Ki Won-gu had been hiding his skills too well. All this time, he'd thought the boy was just an ordinary rabbit, but it turns out he was a lion in rabbit's clothing. At that moment, the system announced that the gate area had been cleared, and the exit would appear around the gate's lock, meaning they had finally completed the evaluation challenge and were about to go home. In the game, achievements and recognition unlock titles, and Ki Won-gu has earned 2 Young Commander and Lion Cub. Meanwhile, the higher-ups watching the match have surely changed their minds about him, and even his grandfather has acknowledged him. This is the dream Ki Won-gu has long held to be noticed after so long. For someone who couldn't even catch a rabbit. The system then prompted Ki Won-gu to choose between the titles of Rabbit Monarch and Lion Cub. But he hesitated. A Cub title would increase the Beast King sword skill by 10%, but he'd lose the Rabbit Emperor title. Ki Won-gu's symbol, his luck stat is 25, and changing titles would drastically reduce his evasion, while raising his luck is too difficult. More importantly, Ki Won-gu's fighting style relies heavily on evasion, so he can't risk lowering his evasion rate. After careful consideration, he decides that nothing can compare to the title of Rabbit Prince. At that moment, Sia-Yun surprised Ki Won-gu by suddenly handing him the golden gate key. It turned out the key had fallen into Sia-Yun's possession the moment they defeated the boss monster, meaning the gate recognized him as the biggest contributor. But for Sia, without Ki Won-gu's sound advice, they wouldn't have cleared the gate at all. So she highly valued his role and contribution in the battle, and sincerely thanked him. Rather than refuse, Ki Won-gu accepts, and a hunter working for the family arrives to collect the key. It was then that Ki Won-gu remembered he had to hand over the key to the nearest hunter after the gate was cleared. The hunter then retrieved the key from Ki Won-gu. I confirm receipt of the gate key, and will report that Lady Sai-Eon and young Master Ki Won-gu played key roles in clearing the gate area, but on the chance, he asks the hunter if they're allowed to collect items from the monster's corpse. Normally, these items would belong to the family, but in this case, he suggests Ki Won-gu ask the head of the family. Fortunately, his grandfather readily agreed to let him collect the items as a reward for winning the evaluation match. Ki Won-gu was overjoyed and wanted to invite Sion along, but she declined and gave her share to her brother. Without delay, he waded into the monster's corpse, hoping to find some loot. As expected, since it was a rank 3 monster, the quality of its magic stones was quite high. And that wasn't all. Ki Won-gu even stumbles upon a spirit stone with intermediate physical abilities, a rare find that allows the user to selectively enhance their stats, so this was a huge win for him. Especially since it was a mid-grade stone. Ki Won-gu was truly grateful to Sion for generously giving him such a rare item without hesitation. Furthermore, he praised Ki Won-gu for mastering the Azure Lightning, making them blush with embarrassment. Afterward, everyone returned to their starting point, greeted by the grandfather's beaming smile. Sion and Ki Won-gu's outstanding performance has clearly elated him, as he showers them with praise and assigns a medical team to treat them. And for Ki Won-gu, being acknowledged and patted on the head by his grandfather feels nostalgic and wonderful, as it's been so long since he last received such praise. Better to be lucky than good. But while his grandfather was in a good mood, Ki Won-gu boldly asked to enter the Sacred Sword Clan's vault. His grandfather agreed to take him, but he wondered why everyone else was coming along. His father then arrived, praising the fight as top-notch. Truly his son. But the family was concerned about how he knew what the fruit did, and worried he might accidentally eat a poisonous one later. Well, this calls for a pinch on the cheek. Soon after, Grandpa led everyone to the vault. Just before entering, he reminded everyone that most of the treasures kept in the main house were linked to the history of the Holy Swordsman family and represented the entire clan, making it a place of utmost importance throughout history. Only a select few besides the head of the family were allowed to enter the vault, and now Sion and Ki Won-gu would be two of them. They stepped inside, immediately overwhelmed by the sight. Though not filled with treasures, the sheer size of the room was staggering. Furthermore, his grandfather generously allowed Sion and Ki Won-gu to take any treasure they desired, reminding them to choose items suitable for their current level. After examining the valuable artifacts, Ki Won-gu still hadn't found anything he truly wanted. Just then, Sion discovered another room and invited him to take a look. There, they found the Beast King's sword, symbol of the Sword Saint family's patriarch, surrounded by countless other renowned blades. Among them, Ki Won-gu stumbled upon the Water Spirit Sword, the perfect weapon for Siyun in the game. He'd heard rumors that you'd recognize the weapon best suited for you, so he wondered if he'd feel a connection to this sword. As expected, the moment he picked up the sword and feigned interest, Siyun's face fell, looking as if she regretted losing something. Although this sword was top tier, he couldn't possibly steal his sister's weapon. Actually, I think this sword suits you better. Hearing this, Siyun happily took the sword from Ki Won-gu, saying that she really liked it. If his sister is happy, so is he. And he can also take this opportunity to ask her for help and protection in the future when he enters the academy. She offered to help him find another sword to replace the Water Spirit Sword, but he had already chosen the sword that was right for him. The instant Ki Won-gu touched the sword, he felt as if the world had narrowed to just him, and it was an unbelievably surreal feeling. And he could even hear the sword calling his name. And as he suspected, it was one of history's most prestigious swords, the Azure Blade, the second master's favorite, forged from a thunderbeast's horn over 100 days, and the only one of its kind in the world. Just equipping this sword is like leveling up to Beast King swordsmanship. This sword is a match for the Water Spirit Sword, and the blade's curve symbolizes Ki Won-gu's weakness. From the start, he never intended to follow the pacifism of the original Ki Won-gu, but unless an enemy must be eliminated, and unless there's a reason to kill, he won't take anyone's life. The Azure Sword will help him deal with those buzzing flies without having to kill them. but he still needs to be careful not to accidentally hit their weak spots. Afterward, the two went outside and showed Grandpa what they had chosen. It seems their grandfather was pleased with their choices and highly valued the swords. But Ki-Woon-gu wasn't satisfied and asked for more. Now that I have my new sword, and it's been so long since I've seen you, I'm overjoyed. Would you be willing to guide me and teach me your swordsmanship? His words shocked everyone present, as they never expected him to be so bold. The grandfather was pleased to help such a bright grandson, but since it was late, and Ki-Woon-gu had fought hard all day, he suggested they begin training in the morning. This reception made Ki-Woon-gu extremely happy. This way, he might gain some confidence. The very next morning, everyone in the family gathered at the training grounds to witness the match between Ki-Woon-gu and his grandfather. Previously, Bo told him that the elders had made things difficult for everyone during the match, so they wouldn't dare ask for a rematch. Even he had never fought his own father because he would never interfere in matches he was sure to lose. So, Ki-Woon-gu is the first descendant to dare challenge an elder. A one-of-a-kind occurrence in the family's history. Back to the match. After both grandfather and grandson warmed up, the grandfather immediately took a sword stance, preparing to guide him through the first move. Ki-Woon-gu knew he was bound to lose, but he aimed to gain experience, refusing guidance and declaring his intent to challenge the strongest swordsman and find his own enlightenment. Hearing his grandson call him the strongest swordsman filled the grandfather with glee. Ahem. Don't get ahead of yourself. I'm just considered one of the stronger ones. Immediately after, his grandfather asked him if he thought he could face stronger swordsmen by experiencing his swordsmanship. He confirmed this with his grandfather, but in reality, he only wanted to learn how to withstand his pressure and temper his resolve. And it seems his grandfather liked Ki-Woon-gu's impressive insight, so he immediately went for it. Of course, he wouldn't show his full ability in a match. Even so, he could still feel his grandfather's terrifying power, so much so that the system kept flashing red, warning him that he was facing severe pressure, and all stats had dropped by 80%. The sparring match begins, but his grandson is careless, prompting a stern reminder in a real fight. You'd be dead. Look me in the eyes, I know you're afraid. But you can't give up unless you face this head-on. However, Kyung-gu's cowardly instincts surged, and his grandfather immediately unleashed an attack, sending him flying into a wall, lying defeated on the ground. He couldn't accept this humiliating loss, especially with the scornful eyes of onlookers burning into him, as if telling him to surrender and accept his cowardly nature, to abandon his pipe dreams. Meanwhile, his grandfather pondered the previous move, because he had intended to push Kyung-gu into the wall, but somehow, he deflected his sword and dodged in that direction to avoid the attack, then shouted to absorb the shock. His grandfather figured this was how he was countering his move, but still, he was just a 1-2-year-old kid. To be able to react to swordsmanship like that was already impressive. Next, Grandpa approached to check on him, inviting and enticing him to continue the fight. I bet you still have some strength left. Want to go again? Kid, because you dodged my attack. I'm sure you won't get hurt again, or if you do, it'll just be a scratch from rolling around. However, Kyung-gu knew the next match wouldn't be any easier, and he wasn't confident he could dodge again. Without instinct, it would be impossible. But he hadn't gained enough courage yet, so he didn't know what to do, quit or continue. Just then, the system suddenly announced that Kyung-gu had acquired a new skill, Courage Level 1. With things looking up, he declined to fight his grandfather. After that, his grandfather didn't give him any trouble either. Besides, thanks to the little troublemaker Kyung-gu, everyone would have to challenge his grandfather, starting with his own father. But Kyung-gu noticed that his father had been acting strangely ever since his grandfather said something during the match, when he asked. His father just said it was grown-up stuff he didn't need to worry about. Then came Grandpa's great slaughter, where family ties meant nothing in the arena, and he mercilessly beat down the family's little troublemakers, right down to Seung-gu, who was so terrified he nearly wet himself. But Grandpa showed no mercy and utterly crushed him. It's safe to say that this year's family gathering was the happiest for Kyung-gu's family, finally ending their turbulent visit and returning to their beloved home. But Kyung-gu's father is now deeply troubled by what his grandfather said back at the main house. Mai believes she can protect A with her current abilities, and it seems her son has decided to overcome his weakness to become the strongest. But Mai doesn't want to fight her siblings, only to be beaten by them. To protect him, Mai must accept the risks. Kyung-gu is determined to change himself and rise higher to protect his wife and children. After the gathering at the main house, Sia-eon and Kyung-gu stayed in touch by texting each other, their relationship seemingly growing closer after their collaboration in the gate. Just then, Hanoan arrived at class. At first, seeing him texting, she assumed it was Sungu, but he said it was his cousin. Hearing it was a girl, she asked if she was pretty. Of course she asked, because most of the female characters in the game are beautiful, outstanding, and have amazing figures. But it seems like she's not happy about this. And she's sulking with Kyunggu. Why would you need a friend like me? Just worry about you and your pretty cousin. Kyunggu is confused, guessing she's jealous because he complimented another girl. Ben then tells Hanoan that she's beautiful too, especially her ears. But before he could finish, Hanoan flew into a rage, hitting him repeatedly for making her feel embarrassed. At this point, Kyunggu didn't know what to say to please. Her girls really are the most incomprehensible creatures. So, to cheer Hanoan up, Kyunggu gave her a gift, the sword he brought from home, remembering her desire to learn swordsmanship. A man in pain, yet still gallant, kind, economical, and refined. Our Kyunggu is truly the epitome of perfection, a woman's dream, a perfect 10. Touched by Krat's thoughtful gift, Hanoan is reminded of him, while her classmates gather around, admiring her sword, seemingly without her objection. On the contrary, she started talking to her classmates, which makes Kyunggu very happy. Then, during class, he finds a letter slipped under his desk. Seeing the letter, Hanoan froze. The heart sticker, a dead giveaway. But before she could react, Kyunggu tore it up, declaring someone would be waiting for him after school. There's something I need to tell you. Lately, Kyunggu has changed. He's not shy anymore, but cool and confident. And since he comes from a prestigious sword family, all the girls in class are head over heels for him. Seeing the looming danger, and Kyunggu suddenly gaining popularity, Hanoan felt uneasy, especially after he read another girl's love letter. But who knew? The usually smart Kyunggu suddenly became clueless, mistaking the obvious love letter for a challenge. Hearing this, Hanoan was traumatized, unable to believe he could even think of that. Soon after, school ended, and despite Kyunggu mistaking the love letter for a challenge, Hanoan was still worried that once he became popular, he wouldn't hang out with her anymore. However, he's still oblivious to her unease, and even wants to borrow the sword from earlier to have a little chat with the letter's sender. Hanoan is now extremely anxious. If Kyunggu rejects the girl's confession, it'll be fine. But if he accepts, she might not be able to stay by his side. The thought drained her face, leaving her without the strength to go home. But then, deep in her calculations, considered another possibility. What if the letter really was a challenge? And if they brought back up for a gang fight, wouldn't her beloved Krat be in danger? After much deliberation, she decides to return to school to rescue Kyunggu. Meanwhile, Kyunggu waited for the letter's author to appear and challenge him. But after a long while, he used his new skill, Warning Net, to scan the area. Sure enough, he spotted 3 figures hiding behind the ventilation shaft, likely the ones who wrote the letter, and Hanoan lurking behind a door. But he'd deal with her later. He had more pressing business with the lurkers. Kyunggu demands they show themselves, or he'll cut the water tank. Hearing this, they panic and rush out, begging him not to. It was then that Kyunggu recognized them, the Guji Undong, Yu Zongdong, and Undong brothers. At first, he had no idea why they wanted to meet. Kyunggu thought Seunggu sent them to cause trouble, or they were here for revenge. But instead, they suddenly knelt and begged for his help. Kyunggu was completely bewildered, not understanding what the hell was going on. So, these 3 wanted him to sponsor them because Seunggu had abandoned them. It all started when they bullied him. Seunggu contacted them less and less, until yesterday, when he suddenly announced he would no longer sponsor them, even preventing them from attending the Swordsmanship Academy. Kyunggu now understands the situation. But according to what he knows, this isn't in the game at all. There's no scenario where the trio is mistreated and begs him. Anyway, this reaction is a bit much, so he guesses that Seunggu might be taking out his anger on them for being utterly defeated at the main house. And here he thought the kid had learned something after getting his butt kicked. A leopard can't change its spots, can it? Meanwhile, the 3 stooges were kneeling, bowing, and begging Kyunggu for forgiveness, hoping he'd charitably sponsor their hunter dreams. At this point, they've thrown all pride and decency to the wind, groveling like they're begging a rich man for support. But Kyunggu doesn't understand why they wrote the letter asking him to come to the rooftop without signing their names. And the handwriting doesn't seem right either. Turns out, they were afraid Kyunggu would ignore them if they signed their names. And the handwriting was thanks to the prettiest writer in class, since theirs was too awful to read. But they insisted that even without names, They'd left clues. Apparently, the gold, silver, and bronze heart stickers on the envelope were proof enough of their sincerity, and they hoped he would accept it. Witnessing this display of brotherly affection from the Three Stooges left Kyung-gu and Hanon speechless, unsure of what to say or do, because he really didn't want to stray from the original story and cause some unsolvable butterfly effect. Plus, he'd had a falling out with them before and didn't want to interfere. But leaving things as they were, with the three of them crying their eyes out, didn't sit right with him either. Finally, after much begging and pleading, Kyung-gu decided to help them, on the condition that they follow his every command. Of course, Kyung-gu asked Eche to join, but she refused. Well, the more allies, the better. So he reluctantly accepted the trio and would ask Mr. Bo at home to arrange some slots for them at the academy. At the same time, he warned them that if this was Sung-gu's plot to spy on him, he wouldn't hold back against traitors. After a long series of promises and heart gestures, the trio finally left. At this point, Kyung-gu asked Hanon to come out from behind the door, curious as to why she hadn't gone home and was here instead. Caught eavesdropping, she awkwardly explained that she was just preparing for the worst-case scenario, in case he encountered an enemy and she needed to help. Kyung-gu could see right through Hanon's clumsy lies, but he was still grateful for her concern. Afterwards, they headed home together, bringing an end to a long day at school. That evening, Mr. Bo told Kyung-gu that the person he needed, Hong Zena, would arrive tomorrow, under the clear blue sky, with sunlight gently bathing the familiar house. Hanon cheerfully greeted Kyung-gu's mother. The polite greeting charmed Kyung-gu's mother, who chuckled at her cuteness and kindly asked if Hanon was uncomfortable coming so early on the weekend. Kyung-gu, equally delighted, greeted Hanon with a bright smile, while Hanon, a bit shy, thanked them for inviting her over. Hanon happily runs ahead, eager to pet the pure white bunny, its long ears gently swaying, zaying hair excitement. Kyung-gu thinks Hanon won't be able to take her eyes off that cute butt today. Seeing Hanon engrossed with the bunny, Kyung-gu suggests she should be more curious about who they're about to meet. Hanon turns, eyes wide with surprise. Kyung-gu quietly reveals that their upcoming teacher is none other than the renowned mage, Hong Zena, piquing Hanon's curiosity as she wonders if she's a celebrity. Kyung-gu explains that Hong Zena is an extraordinary mage, known as the Five-Colored Witch, whose elemental magic is quite special. Captivating Hanon's attention, Kyung-gu elaborates on converting mana into natural elements, imbuing them with attributes to create magic, explaining that basic magic consists of 7 elements: light, darkness, water, fire, wind, earth, and lightning. Among them, light and darkness are special elements, while the other 5 are more common. As Kyung-gu speaks, 2 people react with opposing emotions. One person despaired, lamenting the wasted time spent learning to deal with other elements, while the other was elated, confidently stating that with talent, one could even learn other compatible attributes. However, one can usually only master a single compatible element in their lifetime. Then, Kyung-gu mentions the witch, Hongjena, who has mastered all 7 magical elements. According to him, Hongjena appears with a shining aura, but she has not yet resolved the conflict between light and darkness. Hence, she is called the Five-Colored Witch. Kyung-gu happily emphasizes that Hongjena is the only one who can master all 5 common elements. Hearing this, Hanon couldn't hide her surprise and asked if that was really possible, admitting that Hongjena must be an incredibly amazing person. But then, Hanon hesitated, her rabbit ears drooping, wondering if someone like Hongjena would accept her. Kyung-gu smiled, reassuring her that Hongjena would surely recognize her talent. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room, and Hongjena appeared in a gust of wind, asking gently, "Why have you summoned me, child?" With arms crossed, she advises Kyung-gu with a hint of disdain, emphasizing that a new swordmaster should focus on swordsmanship, not dabble in magic, as it reeks of greed. Her beautiful eyes widen as she sternly declares that swordsmanship alone makes magic pale in comparison. Looking at the 2 nervous children before her, she asks Kyung-gu if he thinks it's a childish joke to want his friend to study with her, to which Hanon politely bows and responds. Kyung-gu felt awkward, realizing Hong Jin-ah had reason to criticize the untalented, but he resented being judged during his break. Hong Jin-ah stated frankly that she came at the Sword God Society's request, but if the 2 children didn't measure up, she'd leave immediately. Kyung-gu secretly hopes that even though she's being sarcastic, Hong Jin-ah will change her tune if she recognizes Zeon Hanoan's talent, and excitedly asks her to confirm it now. Hong Jina laughs, agreeing that it will be done, thinking to herself that she'd heard Hanoan was shy, but didn't realize she wanted to learn magic to compensate for her lack of swordsmanship. She reaches for the black hat, confidently explaining the basic qualities she assesses in Kyunggu and Hanoan, including the amount of mana in their bodies, mana resistance, application skills, and control, all essential for mana manipulation. She proudly puts on the witch's hat, claiming everything will be done using her artifact. The beast magic hat. Kyunggu and Hanoan quickly realize she's showing off her abilities. Even if the name is a bit lacking, she sniffs the hat, reaches inside, and as the two children watch with curiosity, she explains that using this artifact is simple. Once a hand is placed inside the activated hat, it will analyze the magic energy from the hand and create a creature suited to that person's magical power. She gently stirs her hand, and the inside of the hat glows with an eerie light. Even if the kids don't know how to control mana, the hat will automatically draw it from their bodies. She conjures a glowing orb, explaining that as they place their hands inside, the light will coalesce and create a creature best suited to their magical power. Hong Xiana held out her hand, letting the orb of light float upward, leaving a trail of shimmering light, and whispered, "Watch closely." The powerful orb soared upwards, exploding like brilliant fireworks as the children watched the light in awe and wonder. As she raised her hand, an eagle made of light gently perched upon it. She explained that this creature represented her magical power, and the amount of mana in her body could be inferred from the size of the manifested being. Hong Xiana released the mystical creature, explaining to the excited children that the higher the embodiment ratio, the better they could grasp mana concentration, application skills, and efficiency. Finally, she split the hat and encouraged them to give it a try. "All right, white hair, you go first." Hanoan timidly pointed to herself, while Kyunggu watched her intently, secretly glad he'd decided to let Hanoan go first. Seeing Hanoan shyly put her hands into the hat, Kyunggu thought to himself that even though he couldn't see it clearly, it seemed like she had quite a bit of mana in her body. Hanoan held up a pure white orb before her, making Kyunggu wonder just how much mana a 1-2-year-old could possess. And if she was trying to summon a rabbit like him, suddenly, Hanoan's clear eyes widened, and the glowing orb shot forward, creating a gentle breeze that stirred her silky white hair, rising high before the three of them, as Hong Jena shielded her eyes from the blinding light. As a colossal being materialized, casting a vast shadow over them, someone exclaimed in disbelief. Kyunggu's mind raced with questions, his face paling as the giant creature roared, unleashing a powerful shockwave. He couldn't help but think about his expectations for Hanoan's magical power. He thought a larger creature should have appeared, but now it was a proboscis. Instinctively, he quickly hid Hanoan behind him and begged Hong Jena to get rid of it. Hong Jena reluctantly admits she can't, as mana creatures summoned by artifacts can only be dispelled by their summoner. The creature rampages, throwing things around, and Hong Jena assures everyone that they have no other choice. She explains that if Hanoan can't control the mana, they'll have to wait for it to dissipate, or Hanoan will have to disrupt the creature's consciousness or knock it unconscious until the mana fades. An idea sparked in Kyunggu's mind, consciousness dispersal, and he softly called out to Hanoan, who, terrified, instinctively responded with a yes. Kyunggu quickly reached out, and in an instant, Hanoan was safely in his arms. Her face flushed with surprise, Kyunggu took the lead, telling her to close her eyes and focus on the rhythm of his heart, urging her to count each beat. Though a bit shy, Hanoan complied, focusing on the strong, steady beat, while on the other side, the elephant grew more frenzied, its illusionary feet poised to crush them both. Hanoan focused even harder, listening intently to Kyunggu's heartbeat despite her worry. As the radiant elephant charged towards her, its light dazzling but dangerous, and she cried out in despair. Just in time, Kyunggu appears, shielding Hanoan with his small frame, driving away the elephant's gaze. That was close. Kyunggu sighs, relieved. Holding her tight, he anxiously asked if she was all right, when Hong Jena suddenly appeared, praising Hanoan's potential to become a great witch and offering to pass on her magic. Hong Jena places her hand on the girl's shoulder, sincerely inviting her to become her disciple. And at dinner, Kyunggu's father happily asks if Hanoan's magic test revealed her magic to be an elephant. Kyunggu excitedly agreed, and Yeyun chimed in that it was a black elephant. Kyunggu hadn't missed a single detail of Hanoan's master's words, that the elephant's size represented her enormous mana, and the black color meant it was a dark element. Kyungu's father, ever astute, realized this was a power difficult to master, one that even the five-colored witch sought to claim. Kyungu wondered if Hanoan's future was bright, and as he hoped, the answer was yes. Suddenly, the boy stopped, tugged at his father, and with a slightly flushed face, slyly asked if their family could sponsor her. His father suppressed a laugh, sarcastically pointing out that this was his true intention, before seriously assessing the situation. That is, if Hanoan becomes a disciple, she can receive foundational support from him. But the question remains how much the five-colored witch will support her. Indeed, Kyungu knows that she is now in a different position. Once the artisan accepts a disciple, they'll fully support her, and the Kyungu family only needs to help with her studies. Kyungu answered, but his heart was heavy with thoughts, knowing he worried Hongjena wouldn't want to be involved with his family. But deep down, he was happy she'd found the right environment. By ensuring she has the resources and opportunities to prevent her from becoming a dark witch, he wonders if she'll be okay now. But Kyungu is a good guy, and he tells himself he still has to work hard to make Han Yul a mid-level boss. As he ate, his father asked if he was planning to learn magic, and Kyungu casually replied that he would, as it would support his swordsmanship. No sooner had he spoken than his mother and sister's eyes sparkled, eager to know what his creature was like, and he recalls the moment Hongjena curiously asked what creature would emerge from him. The child of the Divine Sword Clan. Kyungu focused his energy into his hands, and unexpectedly, a cute, pure white lion appeared. He answered everyone honestly, albeit reluctantly, and his whole family rejoiced. He was showered with praise from his parents and little sister, being called a great mage and a talented son. But our main character could only force a smile. He honestly thought he was happy to be compatible with magical elements. But after Hongjena and Hanyon's comments and uproarious laughter, he learned that he didn't have much mana in his body. But luckily, it was balanced enough for him to fuse and support his swordsmanship. Hongjena laughed to tears, secretly finding him interesting, and finally said that since she had already accepted Hanyon as a disciple, she would accept him as well. Thinking it would be helpful for her research, Kyungu couldn't laugh because the rabbit-headed spirit beast reminded him of his weak past. Kyungu clenches his fist, determined to seize this chance to master magic. And so, they dove into learning magic from the five-colored witch. And 12 years passed. Then one day, his father happily announced that, though the results weren't final, they'd declared him the next head of Regulus. The whole family celebrated. While Men was shocked that his father had risen to power, he's shocked as his father doing this for him. His father never had any ambition to compete with his older brother. As his family stepped back to manage, seeing his affectionate parents, he realized his father had truly become the second head. He worriedly asked if his father wasn't afraid of competing with his brothers, but his father cheerfully said that even if he caused trouble, there was nothing to worry about. Kyungu was speechless, seeing his family planning a party, still bothered that his father thought he was causing trouble, but he smiled happily in the end. He didn't know what his father wanted to do, but if his father liked it, he would sincerely support him, and so he did, happily congratulating his father. Time passed. Seasons changed, and they continued their lives, some studying, others diligently training. Little by little, everything changed, and the five-colored witch, Xena, finally mastered 7 types of magic. One day during practice, Han Yuan asked Kyungu why he was trying so hard. Kyungu stopped his wooden sword, honestly answering that he wanted to be stronger, but Han Yuan wondered if he wasn't strong enough already. Han Yuan seriously said that a reliable senior had called him one of the strongest of those under 16. The little girl from years ago had become a beautiful young woman. Kyungu was no different. The once weak boy was now hardened, his features sharper, and as he wiped away sweat, he declared his desire for more strength. More than anyone, he knew from his past life that his efforts were not enough, and so he had strived for the last 4 years. Because according to his memories, the game's story will begin in 1 year, and with his current strength, Kyungu can handle the events in the city, but he knows that dying again would be the end, which is why he must become stronger. Stronger still, he's not satisfied with his current state. Han Yun is perplexed, wondering how strong he intends to become, and Kyungu jokingly says he wants the power to stop the world's destruction. Han Yun is annoyed, thinking he's joking, but Kyungu is serious. He wipes his brow, thinking about the strongest people he knows. He wants to become stronger than his grandfather, and Han Yun wonders if he's talking about the head of the Sword Clan, known as the Beast King. With both admiration and ambition, Kyungu declares he wants to surpass his grandfather. Han Yun admits his goal is admirable, aiming to be stronger than beings beyond this world. He knew it was difficult, but he was determined to speak, saying goals should be set high, and there's no rule saying it's impossible. Han Yun, whether before or after, even as she grows, their support for each other will always be there. And she blushed as she said she would always support him so he could become stronger than the Beast King. Kyunggu gazed at her, a long, thoughtful look, before finally smiling and asking her to promise to always be by his side, no matter what. He knew he couldn't save the world alone or prevent countless disasters with his current skills. He needs Habyeon and his teammates, other characters. And finally, Zeon Han Yun once an antagonist. Now, he affirms, his most trusted ally. As he ponders this, Han Yun cheerfully calls out to him, pointing into the distance. Kyunggu's eyes lit up as he gazed at the bustling city ahead, thinking that he and Han Yun had finally arrived at the academy. While Han Yun marveled at the sight of such an artificial island, a sight Kyunggu admitted he was seeing for the first time as well. He smiled, thinking about his 5 years of hard training, the stamina, the agility. His muscles had improved significantly, and while his magic hadn't increased much, it had improved. Kyunggu also noticed the growth had slowed after surpassing those stats, but he was sure it would increase again with further training at the academy and progression through the story. The City Academy was an educational institution created to train and nurture outstanding hunters. Kang Han-byun is excited by the school scenery, and that's exactly what Kyunggu wanted to see scenes from the game. He feels like a fan who successfully met their idol. Secretly thrilled, though a bit sad he won't see Kang Han-byun at the test since he's exempt, but he hopes to see him soon, as witnessing this scene is like a fan's dream come true. And then, he blushed, glancing at her beside him as Han-byun murmured about the beautiful scenery and deep blue water. Kyunggu remembered Han-byun saying she wanted to test her skills, which is why he was so excited. She always held a special place in his heart. This was a story from long ago, when a naive Han-byun curiously asked if the academy had a view of the sea, and he asked why she wanted to know. Han-byun honestly said that she had never seen the sea before and really wanted to see it. She had once seen a beautiful picture of the sea, which is why she wanted to take a train and see the sea from it. He had secretly remembered that, and now happily asks if her dream has come true. Han-byun is both flustered and surprised that he still remembers Kyunggu smiles, promising he'll never forget her dream, as Han-byun blushes in silence, while in the background, some extras are vomiting and complaining about taking a train when they could have flown. Han-byun and Kyunggu were speechless, never imagining their travel sickness would be this bad. Just a few more minutes until they reach the academy. The loudspeaker drones on, wishing the candidates good luck, as Han-byun and Kyunggu gape at the magnificent scene before them. But in the distance, unsteady footsteps approach. They look terrible, like they're about to meet their maker. The three young men collapsed at the gates of paradise, groaning in relief to finally be on solid ground. Han-byun noticed this from nearby, as the guide offered a spell to ease their motion sickness, showing concern for these masculine men. But Huyen-gu knew it was just pride, and provoked them further, saying that if they wanted to become hunters, they had to overcome motion sickness, causing the three young men to seethe with anger inside, while Han-byun and Huyen-gu paid no attention, focusing only on the flyer. The sky was clear that day, and Han-byun and Huyen-gu looked around for the Hoangha Academy, but it was so big they couldn't find it. They were lost, not found, so Han-byun decided that if they wanted to go to District 23, they should go that way. But as they searched for directions, something suddenly caught their attention, causing both Huyen-gu and Han-byun to turn around. It was a cute girl asking if they were headed to the Hoangha Academy. It seems Huyen-gu isn't an introvert after all, especially when faced with someone so lovely, as he readily shares his desire to enter the Hoangha Academy, and asks if Yoonbi is also taking the exam, secretly thinking that meeting her here is a perfect 10. To describe Go Eunbi, she's part of Kang Han-byun's group, and despite claiming to be introverted, she's actually cheerful, sociable, and well-known at the academy. Ironically, Yoonbi denies being an extrovert because she doesn't have many friends, but too much friendliness makes people think Baisang is a deceiver, and with her ability to get along with anyone, Yoonbi could be Kang Han-byun's informant, a man often unaware of his surroundings. Huyen-gu feels this is the perfect time to get to know her, never one to hesitate. Yoonbi introduces herself and readily befriends him, a true lover of peace. She happily calls for fair competition instead of conflict. If she were a spirit animal, she'd definitely be a puppy. Yoonbi then shows off her social skills, complimenting Ki Yoon-gu's companion on his hair, which she noticed on the train, saying it was both beautiful and strong. but Han Yun simply hid behind Ki Yoon-gu and turned away. Revealing a face as pale as death, being bright and energetic, was truly difficult for her. Hwan-gu advises him to just follow the formula. But Han Yun is used to him. While Yun-bai isn't. Yun-bai is like a giant, tail-wagging puppy. And Han Yun is like a little rabbit. Seeing her panic, Ki Yoon-gu introduced Han Yun to Yun-bi and explained the situation. But just then, a girl started calling out Yun-bi's name, searching for her. So Ki Yoon-gu quickly told her they were looking for her. Yun-bi cheerfully bid farewell to her new friends, eager to meet again, while she and Han Yun shyly waved goodbye, thinking Yun-bi was the ultimate extrovert, with perhaps even more friends than their entire family. Just as things calmed down, Ki Yoon-gu told Han Yun it was time to leave, a sentiment echoed by the three Yu brothers. On the A23 train, everyone chatted happily, except for Han Yun and Ki Yoon-gu, who were comfortable in a crowd but not alone. Ki Yoon-gu gazed at the sky, as if trying to take it all in, when suddenly, black holes appeared portals, and there were many more portals within the city academy. If the gate problem can't be solved, the erosion rate will increase, meaning the end is unavoidable. As if realizing something, Ki Yoon-gu makes his decision he can't give up. But life throws him a curveball when he's greeted by a scarred man. A terrified boy tries to run home, and Han Yuan wonders why someone would flee before the exam, guessing it's the fear of death before submitting the pledge. Reading the agreement again, Han Yuan noticed the academy wasn't responsible for any incidents, but Ki Yoon-gu, ever the optimist, encouraged her to believe in herself. But Ki Yoon-gu notices something else. Isn't that Se Yoon-gu over there? Seeing this, Ki Yoon-gu is hopeful that Se Yoon-gu will participate in the exam since they're the same age, but they'll likely be on different teams. So we'll see. At that moment, everyone received their notification slips, and the broadcast announced for everyone to take their positions. Han Yuan is shocked to see that the exam pass is shaped like a badge, even though they said they'd issue positions in a week. But Ki Yoon-gu thinks otherwise. And so, the path to becoming a hero opens, and Han Yuan knows he can't be late for this renowned annual aptitude test. The host then begins the opening remarks, officially starting the exam. He laid out the basics of the exam, highlighting key points, the types of questions, and their color-coded categories. The host also emphasizes the importance of the survival index and the use of the survival card, which is used to measure one's survival index in case of emergencies. The host also thoroughly explained how to use the survival card, and after finishing, his expression changed. The Yu brothers, along with Hang Yun and Sung Woo, watch anxiously, hoping for the best, as the Yu brothers gather to recruit team members, but Ki Won-woo refused outright, preferring to work alone rather than find teammates, much to the dismay of the Yu brothers, who were fervently trying to form a team. As everyone frantically searches for companions, chaos ensues. But the introverted Ki Won-woo finds it all pointless, seeing teamwork as nothing more than carrying extra baggage. Ki Won-woo explained that forming a group stemmed from a lack of confidence and the inability to maintain their title, infuriating the Yu brothers, who had no rebuttal. Ki Won-woo added that they would have too much to handle in a week, so they should focus on themselves. Ki Won-woo believed they could solve their problems without him, which didn't sit well with the Yu brothers, who were barely holding it together. Unable to persuade them, the Yu brothers angrily demanded a fight, but he refused to be drawn in. Seeing the Yu brothers were finished, Ki Won-woo told Han Yun to head to the hotel, saying they'd meet again tomorrow. But Han Yun wondered if Ki Won-woo shouldn't separate himself. But since their rooms were close, they could explore together. But life is a harsh reality, and Han Yun suddenly ran out of energy. Han Yun and Ki Won-woo stare around in shock, realizing a computer error has placed them in the same room. The receptionist bows deeply, offering a sincere apology. The receptionist explained that a sudden surge in participants caused the rooming error and offered a refund to keep them there. But Han Yuan was still in shock. Though she says she's fine, she's anything but. Reluctantly accepting the situation, she's far from okay. Entering the room, she notes how spacious and clean it is. Ki Won-woo was grateful the room had 2 beds, but Han Yuan was already a mess. She prayed and tried to calm herself, while Ki Won-woo could only watch and offer what comfort he could. He sighs, a mix of helplessness and affection, and chuckles to himself. Ki Won-woo doesn't push Han Yuan, and resigns himself to sleeping elsewhere. But the truth is, she doesn't hate him, making Ki Won-woo a little shy, and the atmosphere becomes more romantic than ever. But too embarrassed, she throws a pillow at his face and runs away, leaving him feeling helpless. But as Han Yuan leaves, Ki-woo reveals his true feelings, anxiously sitting on the bed, hoping she's okay. Suddenly, shards of glass float before him. He figures these are puzzle pieces. But the test can't be that easy. Upon closer inspection, he realizes it's a jigsaw puzzle. Gradually, he found a way to solve the problem, using his abilities to piece it back together, until finally, it formed a perfect diamond. So, the problem is solved. His contestant's notebook displays his score and turns white. Just then, Han Yun, fresh from her shower, asked Ki-woo if he'd solved the exam question. With everything settled, he decided to wash off the dust and take a bath, but it was no dream. Suddenly, his foot caught, and he stumbled forward, about to fall on Han Yun. But this position was too suggestive, making her blush like a tomato, and she instinctively punched him square in the face. After the incident, Han Yun ignored Ki-woo the next morning, visibly dampening his spirits. The nights were noisy, and he couldn't sleep. Excess mana, ignored, created spatial tears that spawned monsters. The concentration of those with significant mana amplifies the release of excess mana, causing more spatial tears to appear, and that's why the nights are so noisy, preventing him from sleeping soundly. As Ki-woo ate, he noticed Han Yun's expression, making the rice taste like rubber. Seeing the situation, Ki-woo suggested they work separately, causing Han Yun to spring up in shock. Despite his reluctance, Ki-woo explained the benefits of working separately, but this only made Han Yun feel more dejected. Thinking he was backing out of their date, seeing her say that, he figured she was less angry and chuckled, acting normal. As night falls, Ki-woo sits before the screen, analyzing the data displayed. He asks Han Yun if she has a pen, ready to break it down. This is a type of test that requires the solver to use various tools. Once he deciphers it, he realizes it's a code. Having cracked the code to reveal the location, Han Yun and Ki-woo decide to split up for efficiency, quickly finding the place indicated by the keyword. Recalling the hint, it seemed complex, but not for Ki-woo, a fan of Braveheart. A notice appeared, welcoming him to the Hall of Fame, which he guessed was the first place to go. Looking around, he deduces that the clues, mentioning diamonds, must refer to the founder of this place. When suddenly, Ki-woo notices something and stops dead in his tracks. The founder's colossal statue looms before him, and following the subtle clues, Ki-woo discovers a diamond shape nearby, revealing a mana artifact. And just like that, he passed the test. Now that Ki-woo has deciphered 2 tests, he eagerly anticipates the next ones. And so, Ki-woo surfed through the trials like a wave, solving them as fast as he could breathe, a surprising ease that excited both him and Han Yul. But as more people appeared, Han Yul's expression changed as he sensed more spirit orbs appearing. Gradually, he understood that the student evaluation exam didn't just assess problem-solving skills, but also required a complete entry ticket. The relentless pursuit made it clear a complete ticket could only be obtained by taking it from someone else, making self-preservation the top priority. Receiving Ki-woo's signal, Han Yul quickly darts into a dead-end alley. Reaching the end of the line, they pause to catch their breath, but find no one around. One of the pursuers orders the group to search the area thoroughly, but Ki-woo, brimming with confidence, wondered who these guys were even looking for. Gripping his sword, his confidence soared, ready to show them who's boss. Seeing he was alone, they were confident their numbers would win. But life is full of surprises, and a purple magic appears. Han Yul, waiting above, ambushes them, and one by one, they cower in fear. Ki-woo, riding the momentum, threatens them, asking if they really think their numbers matter against such power. A power that leaves the others shaken and terrified. Without delay, Ki-woo unleashes his magic to eliminate the bait. When all is said and done, Ki-woo tells Han Yul to quickly retrieve the exam tokens. But they resist. But those who live by theft must be prepared to be exploited in turn. Ki-woo smiles, telling them to accept their punishment. And with that, the drawing tests were launched into the sky, only for Ki-woo to tear them all apart with his sword, leaving the onlookers bewildered as their tests vanished before their eyes. With the air of a victor, Ki-woo began teaching a lesson in morality to those who dared try to steal his drawing test. Han Yul shivers, realizing Ki-woo is truly a demon. With that, Ki-woo and Han Yul pass the test and head to the next location. After a full day's walk, this exam, funded by Capital, is held in a vast place with many different locations. Han Yul was worried they might get lost, but thankfully, the locations were clearly marked. After a while, They arrived at the retreat center, apparently their destination. Confidently entering, Kiwongu was surprised to see so many people gathered there, with her social anxiety kicking in. Han Yul instinctively hides behind Kiwongu, as unfriendly eyes glare at them both. Kiwongu stands protectively in front of Han Yul, hoping to boost her spirits with a little provocation. But no matter what, being stared at like this is unsettling. For the sake of the keeper ticket, she'll have to endure it, because all their keeper corpses have turned black, meaning they've solved 30 questions. Suddenly, the whispers shifted back to Han Yul, making her uneasy. The harsh words cut deep, amplifying her fear and making her long to escape. She pushed Kiwongu forward, feeling embarrassed, but he saw no shame in it, in fact. She might even become more famous. But the gossip shifts from Han Yul to Kiwongu, who is initially displeased. But the praise is somewhat acceptable. But when they mentioned his past as the sword god's rabbit, he froze, speechless, unable to grasp what the rumors were aiming at. Bringing up that past is something he never wants to remember, making Kiwongu want to hide his face. But times have changed, and he's in a different position now. Recently, he's even been known as a lion. The whispers continued to swirl, making Kiwongu's blood boil as his fists clenched. Ready to strike, a voice calls out, and Kiwongu regains his composure, seeing the Yu brothers standing there. And then there was Eunbi, approaching the 3 Yu brothers. He exchanged pleasantries with her, so Kiwongu does remember her. She confirms that they're both quite popular, partly because Kiwongu's aura is so bright. And with 2 such people, Kiwongu is curious who the other one is. Eunbi then friendly pointed to one side of the room, whispering what she'd overheard in the crowd, a person in black with tanned skin. He doesn't seem very friendly, but apparently he's from the upright Yang family. And according to Eunbi, he's had his eye on Kiwongu for a while now, but Kiwongu had no idea who he was. Surprising Eunbi, who thought Kiwongu knew everything. It seems it was all just rumors. That young man is Yang Harang, from the upright Yang family. Seeing Kiwongu watching him, Harang boldly approaches. Kiwongu wonders why, but Harang closes in, staring him down. He was a bit speechless, especially since this guy was asking about his identity in such an unfriendly tone. Harang's brow furrowed as he scrutinized him, but suddenly, his expression shifted, and he offered a friendly smile. Seeing that, Kiwongu admits it's pretty cool and hopes to make a new friend, as they both agree to a friendly competition. But thinking about their sparring, it felt like a chase, with Harang aiming for Kiwongu as a target for growth, constantly striving to reach him. Seeing this wasn't bad, Kiwongu accepted the boy before him, but the atmosphere is short-lived, as an announcement declares that anyone entering the exam room will be disqualified, and a group of students and supervisors enter with the most intimidating attitude. The proctor ordered the materials brought in, and a cart was wheeled inside. As each student association lifted their stone, feeling its weight in their hands, leaving Kiwongu curious about the stone before him. Seeing this, 2 students holding stones turned to look, their faces full of anger. They glared at the newcomers before them, causing one of them to burst out laughing. Seeing this, the supervisor turned away, shocking the student into stunned silence, before mercilessly eliminating him for his predictable tactics. The student council quickly arrives to find the young man foaming at the mouth on the floor, in a rather awkward position, leaving Kiwongu hesitant. But the person he was worried about had just sent him 3 messages. He guessed that on the other end, his sister was probably making strict evaluations, and perhaps many more would be eliminated next. The supervisor announced the engine's activation and ordered everyone to step back. And Kiwongu realized the cubes the seniors brought out were actually a machine. Now glowing, they transform rapidly upon activation, startling Han Yul and Kiwongu. As the cubes become solid stone walls, the supervisor announced that these doors must be opened by the examinees themselves. Success means passage. Failure means élimination. Meanwhile, the student assistants prepared the cubes, and this test could be repeated multiple times. And now, the test begins. Meanwhile, every move of each participant is displayed on the screen, and the audience marvels at the sudden surge in successful attempts. Inside the testing room, everyone struggles to push open the doors, as elimination announcements echo relentlessly. The reality of the situation is disheartening, but the student data analysis offers a glimmer of hope that more will pass. Suddenly, a scream that could wake the dead echoed through the arena as Harang unleashed his power, obliterating everything in its path. Everyone is astonished by this immense power. Truly the descendants of the Yang family. Harang passes the test. But one question remains. Why did he only open 4 gates with such power? But to open the 5th gate requires immense power, and opening 4 is already impressive. Yet, besides Harang, others from prestigious families have opened 5 gates. As expected, the children from prestigious families have great potential. Unbi seems happy to have passed and looks at everyone. These children truly have a lot of potential. But suddenly, the observer notices something as Han Yul steps forward. Eager to test her own strength, her hand on the door, a colossal power awakens, leaving everyone stunned by its sheer density, and just like that, Han Yul easily opened the door, leaving the gatekeeper stunned, barely able to announce her passing. Wondering how she did it so easily, they wondered what family she came from to open it so easily. As the mysterious figures gathered, they realized she was Professor Hong's disciple. So, Han Yul is the disciple of the 7-colored sorcerer, but Professor Hong just smiles kindly, saying it seems he has a connection with all his disciples thanks to Han Yul. But after passing through, Han Yul shyly hid behind Kyungu to look at the stats, worried she'd be scolded for not practicing hard enough if she couldn't open the door. Not to mention, Na 84 was considered very strong among mages. Kyungu playfully teases her about her shyness, only making Han Yul even more bashful. Before confidently approaching the door himself, from afar, it looked tiny. But up close, it's massive. Without hesitation, he places his hand on the door, power at the ready, and just like that, Kyungu easily opened the first door. Then the second, as everyone watched. Then the third, all eyes were on him, and with each subsequent door, Kyungu had to exert more and more strength. If the 4th door was already difficult, what would the 5th door be like? Standing before the 5th door, Kyungu felt an urge to avoid it. When an urgent announcement ordered the candidates to withdraw their mana or risk an explosion, but the situation was rapidly deteriorating, throwing Kyungu into a panic. Suddenly, a thought emerges. He needs to listen to himself and overcome his fear. With newfound power, Kyungu finally opens the 5th gate, unsure of what's happening. Everyone is thrown into confusion. The 5th door was unresponsive, but now it's open. They need to check if it's been damaged. Among the mysterious figures, Professor Hong silently pondered something. The door wasn't broken at all. It was just that Kyungu had used Han Yuan's magic to amplify his own, deliberately putting himself in danger to unlock his limits. At his age, Professor Hong had never seen anything like it. Everyone in the exam room was in disbelief, as Kyungu tried to assure them that he was fine, but Han Yuan scolded him for his recklessness. While in the distance, Harang eagerly called out his name, impressed by how Han Yuan and Kyungu solved the test. Seeing her rush towards him like a royal concubine to her emperor, Kyungu was a little scared. Still, Harang enthusiastically invited him to eat together, and so, Kyungu and Han Yuan passed the exam. And the next test, the road to Mount Anji, began with an announcement. Everyone was focused on the goal, running as fast as they could, while the announcement continued to echo, ensuring the examinees understood the rules. Every contestant, including those from the great clans, gave it their all to complete the test perfectly, which was divided into levels with time limits measured in minutes. Now, let's hope the examinees complete this with joy. But before long, a scream erupts as a log hurtles towards them. Han Yuan feels like he's about to die. Startling Kyunga, who has been observing the test and deducing the fastest solution, looking at the waterfall ahead. It seems to hold the answer to this trial. Suddenly, Kyungu glances down and notices something. It's an iron sign with an arrow, like a trap. Seeing this, he understands the problem and smiles like Miss Nan. He's figured out how to pass this test. Time is running out, and everyone is worried with only 10 minutes left until the 4-hour mark. Meanwhile, the prestigious mages were already making smooth progress, impressing the proctors with their exceptional skills. Suddenly, a loud cry echoed through the mountains as someone fell into a trap. While Han Yun and Kyungu struggled just as much, they clung on, timing their moment perfectly. And Kyungu signaled to Han Yun that now was the time to strike. She unleashed her power, and with only 4 hours to spare, they finally made it through, collapsing on the ground, utterly spent, as if they'd already met their maker. Reflecting on the earlier test, he needed to sense danger to activate his evasion instinct, and some of the traps forced them to follow a set path, making the test take longer for Han Yun and Kyungu. And to make matters worse, Kyungu was sent flying into the air at one point, yet they still managed to pass with flying colors. With everything finally done, he returned to his favorite cafe. Appreciating its decor, he always felt comfortable and even a little happy here. Despite it being from his past life, suddenly, someone arrives to congratulate Han Yun and Kyun-gu on passing the test, asking Han Yun if he's prepared for the third round at Seoul. Both are happy to see her, especially Kyun-gu. While Han Yun just stares blankly at the two of them, they all sit down to enjoy tea, and Seoul gently asks how her younger siblings are doing, leading to a warm conversation. Kyun-gu is genuinely happy to respond to Seoul and ask about her current situation, but Seoul couldn't reveal any more information about the upcoming exam, as that would truly be cheating. So out of love, instead of giving them answers, Seoul chose to give them advice, which they eagerly awaited. Seoul analyzes data from past practical exams and the conditions within the tests, especially the 4th and 5th rounds for Kyun-gu and Han Yun, leading Han Yun to deduce that physical or magical attacks will be used against monsters, which is entirely possible. After receiving Seoul's advice, both Kyun-gu and Han Yun felt much more confident, while Seoul quietly sighed, hoping her younger siblings would pass the test. They talked until it was time to part ways, Seoul carefully reminding Kyun-gu and Han Yun to be wary of hidden dangers, especially at night in the academy, which was unlike the outside world. Suddenly, a blood-red eye appears from the darkness, and a demon approaches the people, curiously seeking candidates for its doll. The next day, at Dimensional Association Hall 206, all examinees were ordered to gather as the proctor began to announce the details of the 3rd and 4th tests. Kyun-gu realizes that from now on, they won't be returning to the dorms. But living beyond the gate, something must have happened. Rumor has it that those who commit serious crimes or betray the Hunter's Code are called villains. Some even replace their hearts with special crystal shards. A most inhumane act of magic. These beings have red eyes and seek mana from living creatures, having lost nearly all ideals, the most infamous of them being the deceitful witch, Lee Ga-yeon. And now, she officially enters the game. If so, last night was the perfect time to snatch a student's body. As the weaker students had just been eliminated, Kyun-gu relentlessly tries to deduce Lee Ga-yeon's actions, concluding she's a dangerous individual who collects and hunts talented students. If that's the case, he needs to be ready. A notice appears, informing him that he has entered the exam, but all was for naught, and he faced the demon beast in dismay. This dark and ancient exam space offered no sign of Lee Ga-yeon, but thanks to that, Han-eon and Kyun-gu easily passed the test, ranking at the top. Shocking everyone watching, Kyun-gu struggled to stay alert, analyzing Lee Ga-yeon's potential appearance, and as the other examinees awaited the final test, he turned to observe it closely. If he and Han-eon couldn't face Lee Ga-yeon alone, they'd have to seek help perhaps from Kang and Buell's group. Seeing Harang's agreement, Kyun-gu, still unadjusted, wanted to curse, but it was a perfect opportunity to defeat Lee Ga-yeon's clone and weaken her. Just then, a foot appeared, and everyone began the 5th test, and the explainer will be Gam Kang Academy's president, the Star Witch, President So Hyun. Seeing the president's aura, everyone was surprised because of her reputation. She's extremely powerful and cool. The president's soothing voice echoed throughout the hall. Hyun was recognized as an incredibly powerful mage, and for good reason. She possessed a magical weapon, a satellite orbiting the Academy City. Furthermore, she was a key figure in one of the bad endings, making her a formidable opponent, and not of the same generation as his grandfather. So Hyun was not someone to trifle with. But damn, he realized this appearance had distracted him too much, and he needed to focus on the exam. By the time Kyun-gu regained his focus, Hyun had begun explaining the test. And if Hyun herself created this test, it was going to be tough. Slowly, Hyun revealed the test to the candidates, a token war. She explained the rules, and Kyun-gu sensed that, even though the explanation sounded simple, nothing in life is free. Looking at his phone, he's drenched in sweat. As the scoreboards are transparent and the stats are clear, she further explains that if a 100-point body is chosen, regardless of color, contestants must collect bodies totaling 200 points, including their own, gently pressing a button. The system displays the terms to be understood in this test. Hyun focuses on analyzing the strategy she needs to pass the test. When an announcement declares the test has officially begun, and the black aptitude candidates will go first, Kyun-gu now contemplates how to capture Lee Ga-yeon's doppelganger, analyzing his opponent like a book, and knowing her madness turns people into puppets. He's determined to stop her before she destroys everything. Han-eon turns to Kyun-gu with the battle plan, but he remains ever optimistic, leading her to wonder if he'll be alright without her. Yet Kyun-gu is instinctively optimistic. It certainly raises suspicions, but just as he was getting excited, Kyung-gu suddenly calmed down. Han, Ion wondered, what if they were being deceived? But Kyung-gu simplified it, just defeat them. A notice then appeared, informing them they'd entered the Golden Gate. A space of pure azure. Kyung-gu eyed the sign, a bit skeptical of the gate's investment, and decided to return to the island's center to find the other contestants. Fearing Lee Ga-hyun might have taken over someone else's body, following the path through the forest, Kyung-gu pondered the possessed contestants and those who might share his will, however few they may be. When he suddenly noticed something strange, a scythe of death hurtled toward him, and Kyung-gu barely managed to dodge it. The scythe swung relentlessly, and he braced himself to strike back. But his opponent recognized him as a fellow contestant and immediately launched a support attack. It was none other than Yui Ri from the Refinement clan. But she looked a little worn. Recalling the past, he first met Yui Ri during the 4th exam. She had approached Kyung-gu at an event, wanting to get close, and he easily won her over by being talkative. But it's surprising she still calls him by that nickname. And it's dangerous to let her attack so suddenly. Instead of move by move, perhaps it was fate that Kyung-gu would meet Yui Ri both that day and today. A coincidence, but not really. Yui Ri must think they're destined for each other. Hearing this, Kyung-gu could barely manage a strained smile as he steered the conversation toward finding a place to hide. And as he turned to leave, Yui Ri immediately demanded to know where he was going. Her face twisted with a hint of darkness, hinting that they were in the middle of a test, her voice growing more threatening as she questioned why he would leave just as they met. The white-haired woman, wielding a massive scythe, exuded power as she pointed it forward, taunting the protagonist to a one-on-one duel, saying that his departure would ruin the fun, her mysterious purple eyes gleaming. She reveals she witnessed our hero's battle with the final boss rabbit, and she insists on a duel. Or the game won't be fun. She pulls her scythe forward, brimming with confidence. Certain of her victory, Kyung-gu steps back, gripping his sword tightly. A fight is inevitable, and he's equally confident he'll defeat her and claim the 200 points. Elsewhere in the competition, someone clutches a pile of points, surrounded by a sing-song voice, but it's less mermaid, more horror movie. With her spoils in hand, the brown-haired girl turns and walks away. Feeling like this competition is too easy, since no one can beat her, people lay scattered on the ground, defeated by the brown-haired girl, who may look small and cute, but is definitely not to be trifled with. To her, these kids just aren't up to par, merely small fry to collect points from. But there are a few targets who are acceptable. First, the child from the Yi family. All talk and no game. Next is a child from the Cha family, a pretty girl with striking jade green eyes. It turns out, inside the brown-haired child is an old woman with white hair and a terrifying smile. Ah, he's eyeing those two kids, planning to turn them into puppets. Now, back to the main character's fight with the white-haired woman. White hair unleashes a flurry of attacks, relentlessly slashing forward as our hero desperately dodges. Her massive scythe swings wildly if Kyung-gu doesn't react quickly. He'll be sliced sashimi. To white hair, dodging like that is no different than running away. But Kyung-gu has calculated everything. He's just fighting according to his own tactics. The scythe whistles past, costing Kyung-gu a few strands of hair. One wrong move, and he'll be visiting the underworld. The white-haired woman's scythe techniques are truly refined. Kyung-gu is exhausted from dodging, and decides to end the battle while she's thrown her scythe and is unarmed. But the white-haired woman gives a dangerous smile, revealing she has more skills to show. With that, her white hair transformed into a pair of muscular arms, each fist capable of ending a life. The white-haired woman declared she would end the battle and claim victory. The hair hands lash out at Kyung-gu, forcing him to retaliate, leaving him no room to dodge. But Kyung-gu is no ordinary opponent. He raises his sword with a smirk, and it's clear this is no ordinary blade. The lion's paw is unleashed, severing the white-haired woman's locks and disabling her hair-formed hands. She realizes Kyung-gu is one of the sword gods of the Du family, a title of immense prestige. With his abilities, that last move was no problem at all. The white-haired woman immediately gets serious, and the battle intensifies. Clutching her scythe, she warns Kyung-gu not to celebrate too soon, as she's no longer holding back, while Kyung-gu, brandishing her exam badge, confidently declares their battle is over. So, he used the haircut as an opportunity to snatch her badge. It's only now that she realizes her badge was stolen. Now she understands why Kyung-gu went to such lengths to cut her hair. Though the battle is theoretically over, Kyung-gu worries that the white-haired girl will get angry and try to fight him for her badge. As if reading his mind, the white-haired girl says she has no intention of fighting. She's not a child who would throw a tantrum to get her badge back. And she readily admits defeat, surprising Kyungu with how easy it all was. Whitehair says that because her exam badge is black, no one would dare mess with her, making the exam boring. Kyungu can't believe her reasoning. After exchanging pleasantries, Whitehair bid Kyungu farewell and wished him luck, hoping to see him again at the academy, adding that fighting him would be no fun. Kyungu stammered a reply and bid her farewell, wondering if he had enough points to pass, when a voice announced that with a total score of 200, he had reached the minimum score just 1 hour after entering. Kyungu wondered how Hanyun was doing and if she was all right. Meanwhile, Hanyun gently advised her opponent to stay still to avoid further injury, suggesting she conserve her strength. The red-haired girl lay in a heap on the ground, covered in wounds, still unable to believe her defeat. It was Min Aaron of the Min family, and Hanyun was now healing her, but she still couldn't accept the outcome of their battle. Aaron, confident in her surprise attack, believed victory was assured, attributing her loss to Hanyun being the disciple of the seven-colored witch. Han Ayan chuckled, saying M only countered because Kyungu told her to be wary. Someone as gentle as Hanyun would never attack anyone. Since Aaron had so many badges, Hanyun asked for just one, saying she deserved a little something for her efforts. Areen begged Hanyun not to take her badge, but Hanyun, always one to follow the rules, gently refused and wished her a speedy recovery. Watching Hanyun walk away, Areen was left in despair. Aaron, who always yearned to be at the top, broke down in tears at her failure. And so, the first day of the 5th round came to an end. The next morning, the sky was clear, the dew glistened, and Kyungu stretched and yawned after waking up. Just then, the system announced at 9 a.m. that all badges would be displayed within a 500-meter radius. Looking at the map, Kyungu decided he needed to move to a crowded place, smashing the street to find Lee Gai-eun's house number. He felt the map was only good for showing badge locations, since everyone else would be gathering at the same spots to hide their badges anyway, but with no other options. Kyungu opened it and decided to just go. Meanwhile, Hanoan, running for her life, laments that the game never ends. But despite her frantic state, she's collected quite a few badges. Suddenly, remembering Kyungu, she frantically searches around, wondering where he is. She even muttered about a supply drop at noon, wishing they could meet up. A blonde girl overheard her, exclaiming something, and Hanoan finally noticed her, bathed in sunlight. The girl radiated a dazzling aura. Hanoan realized in astonishment that this was the princess. Legend has it, 200 years ago, during a time of great upheaval, something emerged alongside the world tree, the world's empire, the Greys, and Lisa is their princess. Upon hearing the title of princess, Hanoan was thrown into confusion, terrified at the thought of having to fight one not just in the game, but in the real world as well. Lisa, ever so naturally, recognized the girl before her as the rabbit-eared girl who had made a stunning impression during the first exam, stark naked and flying about. She then approached and greeted Hanoan like an old friend, and Hanoan returned the greeting in kind. Seeing her hesitation, Lisa reassured her that in the exam, all are equal, just potatoes. But because of Lisa's status as a princess, Hanoan still took it as an order to obey. Finally, they get back to the main issue, and Lisa calls out to Hanoan, startling her. Then, she proposes that if they're not going to fight, they should become allies, because Lisa needs someone to accompany her until she finds her heart. Hanoan was torn, fearing the trouble that might follow if she accepted. But Lisa didn't seem like a viper, and Kyungu trusted her. After a moment's thought, Hanoan decides to keep things friendly and agrees to cooperate. A while later, the sun is high in the sky. Meanwhile, after dealing with the other contestants, Kyungu realized it was time for the supply drop. The system gave him the location, and he immediately set off, hoping to meet up with Hanoan. On his way to the supply drop, Kyungu plans to take both the badge and supplies from any other contestant who gets there first. After running for a while, Kyungu spots the first supply box. But someone has already claimed it. It's an acquaintance. Go Unbi. But Unbi wasn't alone. She was accompanied by a group of her teammates. Kyungu observed that Unbi seemed to make friends wherever she went. She then asked about Hanoan, but Kyungu hadn't met this bunny-eared girl yet. So Unbi kindly suggested they have lunch together. Kyungu agreed to join. And as they walked, they asked Han about their spoils, when Unbi suddenly inquired about someone, a woman. According to her description, she acts as a judge, creating trials for others to test their abilities. Failure means losing their badge, while success allows them to keep it. Hearing this, Kyunggu was fairly certain Eunbi was talking about Lee Ga-hyun. But to be 100% sure, he asked Eunbi to describe her appearance. Eunbi replied that she looked quite petite and peculiar with a gold badge, wielded dual swords, and seemed quite tanky. Eunbi added that she seemed to be looking for the person who collected the most badges. Hearing this, Kyunggu grinned, feeling like he knew how to lure Lee Ga-hyun in, and then proposed a collaboration with Go Eunbi. First, after collecting all the badges from Go Eunbi and her teammates, they would enact a strategy directed by Go Eunbi, who would feign fear of the swordsman from the Divine Sword Clan, Kyunggu, and then rally other teams to cooperate in confronting him. She added that they could earn over 1,000 points in a single night. A theatrical performance. Hearing the enticing offer, a host of contestants supported and joined, at which point, Kyunggu would reveal himself, unleash his skills, and take everything from them. But that wasn't his main goal. He wanted to cause such a stir to attract Lee Ga-hyun's attention. And he was right. Lee Ga-hyun, perched in a tree, had been watching and assessing everything, finding him interesting and looking forward to seeing Kyunggu's pained expression. As night fell and the day's events concluded, everyone returned home. Looking at the badges in her hand, Eunbi couldn't contain her joy, thanking Kyunggu, who reminded her to share his portion as well. Eunbi felt uneasy that Kyunggu contributed the most, but he saw it as everyone helping each other, so an even split was natural. Eunbi thanked him profusely. Looking around, he was a little disappointed that Lee Ga-hyun didn't appear, but from the intuition of his inner power, he could always feel that gaze following him. And finally, the woman with the mysterious golden badge, he couldn't recall her face, but the badge shone brightly in the night. He guessed she was waiting for the right moment to give him a surprise, but it would probably be tomorrow. Since it was the final exam and also the last chance, Kyunggu had been waiting for this moment. And as he hoped Lee Ga-hyun would hurry, a red rift suddenly appeared. A voice echoed from the rift, declaring that they would seize this night, and the one to suffer would be the child from the Divine Sword Clan. As Kyunggu predicted, Lee Ga-hyun would seize tonight as her golden opportunity. Using the spirit soldiers behind her, Ga-hyun announced that everyone had a task to fulfill. As night falls, the staff is thrust into the ground as a focal point. The weary Arin feels a pang of hurt, unable to break through her limits and far from a thief. Remembering what just happened, she attacked the passing contestants. The more she thought about it, the more sense it made. She's a mage, so Arin's doing well. How could anyone get 200 points overnight? It's a piece of cake. But just then, something in her skirt pocket vibrated, startling her. A system notification about the gate appeared at that exact moment, making her wonder. The other examinees are heading to that spot at 9:00. Should Arin take a little more from them? But suddenly, another sound echoes, startling Arin, who turns around. She braced herself, but the monsters were overwhelming. And then a creature appeared that should only exist on the island terrain they'd just passed. A monster roared and charged, leaving her no time to think. Her legs reacted instantly, and she ran. But suddenly, young Harang appears to help her, though she thought he was going to abandon her. He wonders why so many monsters are here. But it's best to tell Kyunggu before anything bad happens. Turning around, he noticed members of the Min family and quickly apprehended them. But Minarin's eyes began to glaze over. He seizes the opportunity to grab her shoulder, saying Kyunggu might be in danger, and it's best to go together to save him. Startling Minarin, who doesn't recognize him and doesn't want to go, but Harang can't ignore a friend in peril. So they need to leave now. But Arin really didn't want to go. She wasn't a man. The blonde girl with Han Yun sensed something was wrong and turned to ask her. Han Yun deduces that the appearance of such a large group of monsters indicates the involvement of a high-level entity, but a rank 3 entity is the highest on this chaotic island. And there's nothing we can do alone. This is truly a quarter hell. Suddenly, she found Kyunggu on the ground amidst splatters of blood. Yunbi was paralyzed with fear, unsure of what to do. But Kyunggu, with unwavering resolve, urged everyone to regain their composure and asked if they were prepared. He didn't expect to be consumed by rage alongside the monsters, as they appeared one by one, targeting the students, not only harming others, but also possessing intelligence. Ga-hyun must be serious about this. Kyunggu bravely steps forward to hold off the monster, telling everyone to run. But unlike the movies, Yunbi agrees to flee. The baboon now faces Kyunggu alone, realizing it's stronger in the dark, dashing forward as if surfing a wave. The baboon monster was no match for him. As he swiftly moved behind it, sword ready to strike, Kyungu brandishes his sword, slicing the baboon in two with textbook precision. The monster's surprised shriek echoing in the night, blow after blow. The Azure Lightning sword style is unleashed, and Kyungu effortlessly defeats the monster. But it's not that simple. Kyungu figures Yunbi must have escaped, and he's stuck here. So he has to eliminate them all. Quickly, a girl, answering Kyungu's call, explains she didn't intentionally wait for him here alone. Drawn by the scent of the wind, Ga-hyun introduces herself to Hyungu, suggesting they unleash the market keepers to deal with the monsters. But why not do it together? Seeing this, Ga-hyun was intrigued, thinking he was indeed an interesting guy. Kyungu didn't mind making a new friend, but he wondered if her intentions were good. Ga-hyun wondered how Kyungu knew her true identity. Her expression quickly turning menacing, Ga-hyun had clearly hidden everything so well. At that moment, the system board appeared, analyzing Ga-hyun's parameters. Of course, he knew from the board, but he'd never tell. So if he's curious, he can come to him instead of just judging. Ga-hyun grinned, enjoying his temper. But he'd better regret it. In the observation room, red alerts blare, signaling an emergency, and everyone is thrown into chaos. The white-haired woman orders an announcement to be made to those in the forest, instructing them to protect the participants and, when the gate opens, to break straight through. She stared at the emergency alert, a sense of unease washing over her as her eyes turned bloodshot. The system announced that pressure was being activated, and capabilities were reduced by 8%. Soon, more warnings flashed, and Lee Ga-hyun laughed gleefully, moving with lightning speed while taunting Kyungu that he'd never catch her if he kept running. If he tells her how he figured out her true identity, she'll spare his life. He's a good fit for her Gu, so she doesn't want to kill him. Kyungu, struggling against Lee Ga-hyun's attacks, casts the third form of his sword technique, Lion Guardian, but it was still an uphill battle for Kyungu. As expected, the 6 demons were the strongest in the Demon Association. Their power was immense, and in this dire situation, Lee Ga-hyun suggested that he join them. Hearing this, Kyungu smiled and replied, "Now you want me to become a demon, you're hopeless." Sorry, but he has to decline. With that, he chanted the sword's awakening. The second king style, Lion's Roar, creates 3 blue slashes, allowing Kyungu to counter Lee Ga-hyun. She's thrilled, asking if she should prepare a doll to his liking, and to just let her know she wants them both to live happily ever after. She really likes Kyungu. Don't deny her that. She wants to give him a chance. Hearing Lee Ga-hyun's deranged desire, Kyungu could only scoff, saying he had to reject such absurd and unconvincing offers. Lee Ga-hyun, should he give her a chance? Does she prefer a rosy, blossoming life, or a hopeless dead end? Kyungu unleashes his sword technique, Dialusa, creating massive bolts of lightning that strike Lee Ga-hyun, sending her into a screaming fit as she takes a critical hit and injures her leg. She's furious that he won't listen. So be it. You'll learn your lesson the hard way. So eager to die, she'll grant his wish, sending her remaining legs straight towards Kyungu, who has plans of his own. Lee Ga-hyun stands firm despite the direct hit of the electric current. It won't be easy. But Kyungu must act. He boldly declares to his captor that he has no reason to obey her and refuses to be her puppet. He follows up with Beast King Sword Style number 5. Lion Crush, determined to overwhelm her and win this deadly battle. He unleashes a furious barrage of attacks, employing the Beast King Sword Style's first form, Lion's Rending Touch, each strike fluid, yet powerful and decisive. Lee Ga-hyun can't help but praise his family's swordsmanship, admitting it's not bad at all. This carrot and stick approach is interesting. Though, your family is a nuisance. I didn't have time to react. She shot a web at Kyungu's arm and kicked him away, leaving him to curse. This isn't going well. She thought she had him. But the tables have turned. Lee Ga-hyun now has the upper hand, declaring that Kyungu will become her puppet. This could be his last chance. She'll let him do as he pleases. But in the distance, a green flare has been launched behind their enemy, a signal Kyungu recognizes from their third-round agreement with Eunbi and Han Eun. He struggles to his feet, telling her to focus on surviving now before thinking about the future. Lee Ga-hyun seems confused, asking what he means. But then, she saw a massive, strange purple symbol appear behind her. It was Hanon, arriving just in time to rescue the protagonist, turning the tide of battle in an instant. With a burst, the purple circle descended upon Lee Ga-hyun like a flying saucer, successfully immobilizing her. and Hanoan landed. Rushing to Kyungu to ask about Han, Lisa was there too. Asking Kyungu if he was all right, he weakly replied that he was relieved they found him. Wondering when Hanoan had become so close to Lisa Gray, Kyungu asked if she was Lisa Gray, but she apologized, saying there was no time for introductions. The protagonist asked if she had healing abilities, and requested she heal his wounds, to which she agreed. Returning to the battle, Hanoan asks Kyungu what that thing is, as it appears to be a demon. Kyungu warns that it is, but be careful. She's strong. Lisa reassures them to leave the healing to her. Hanoan thanked Lisa Gray and entrusted everything to her, then turned to the demon, Liga Hyun, asking if she was responsible for this, having broken free. Liga Hyun says she didn't really want to do it, to kill him. She then fires webbing at the good guys, but something slices through it. A scythe appears, and its master, Nam Yuri, excitedly greets Kyungu, explaining she sensed a great power and rushed to investigate. It turns out Kyungu is fighting a monster, no, a demon, and she's always happy to see him. Behind her, Iyang Harang arrives with reinforcements. Grinning, Kyungu, you're fighting that powerful demon. I'm here to help. And I brought backup, Nam Yuri explained, surprising Kyungu that she'd picked them up on the way. Kyungu realizes Iyang Harang has brought Min Arin, and now he and Iyang Harang are together. Han Yoon and Min Arin, Nam Yuri and Lisa, see you later. Almost all the main characters in the game are here. And with them, this power, working together, they'd be more effective against Liga Hyun than fighting alone. And Liga Hyun was already losing her patience. She said with a sigh that she was having fun at first. But now this troublesome group had to show up, no matter how many chances she gave Kyungu. She'll now teach these male leads a lesson. She roars. She shoots webs to attack. Kyungu shouts a warning, saying that everyone must have realized by now that their opponent is a demon. One of the 6 demons, the dancing witch. Liga Hyun. And this is just Liga Hyun's puppet. Don't let your guard down. Everyone, Nam Yuri says playfully. Especially when the opponent is the dancing witch Liga Hyun. She knew being around Kyungu would be interesting. She'll handle the minions so Kyungu isn't affected. Nam Yuri accepts the challenge, transforming her left hand into the fire dragon's claw. With this change, she shatters Liga Hyun's plans, causing the demon to grind her teeth in resentment. Cursing the annoying trash that dares to block her power, she'll send them all to their ancestors today. As Liga Hyun creates an incredibly strong web of defense, so strong that even Min Arin's fire couldn't melt it. Liga Hyun mocked, asking if Aaron's flames could possibly melt her silver silk. Then came Hanoan's pursuit, and Yang Harang's explosive punches, both attacking so suddenly that Liga Hyun lost her abdominal defense. She's caught Yang Harang's leg, partially immobilizing him, and sensing her chance, Kyuno advances, sword in hand, knowing Liga Hyun's power is a serious threat. But thankfully, Nam Yuiri and Min Arin are there, with everything under control, and Hanoan and Yang Harang keeping her distracted. Her legs couldn't reach him. This ends here. Liga Hyun must fall. He leaped, unleashing the lion-shattering strike upon his foe. Kyunu alone faced Liga Hyun, sword raised, unleashing a great power. Witnessing his strength, she cursed her inability to defeat them all. And though sweat poured down her face, Liga Hyun still boasted that he couldn't escape safely because her soul was connected to her main body. If she dies, this body's memories will be sent back to the main body. So Liga Hyun threatens him, saying he'll become the target of the demon society if she dies. But Kyunu's face doesn't change. Instead, he smirks triumphantly. He'd never regret it. And it would only make finding her easier. Killing her was inevitable. Seeing that words were useless, Liga Hyun could only glare at him, with a hand outstretched. White threads emerged and coiled around. Suddenly, something hurtled toward her, with blinding speed and a brilliant blue light. Before she could react, Liga Hyun was struck by a sharp arrow of immense power, piercing her wrist. She was utterly shocked, not knowing where it came from. It turns out Yoonbi was behind this, her face resolute as she aimed her arrow. The system also notified her that she had received the passive skill, Eye of the Good Shooter Level 1, which increases hit rate by 5%, replacing her. Ki Yunyu's face darkened as he silently praised Yoonbi's well-timed arrow, then continued to taunt Liga Hyun, believing her soul was linked to her main body, granting her those memories. Anyone who's scared can leave, Ki Eunu declared, displaying his high IQ as he confronted her. He suspected her earlier words were only effective if she successfully left, and Liga Hyun's soul couldn't interfere. If he kills Liga Hyun here, the main body won't even know. It seems she underestimated him. Hearing this, her face turns even uglier, annoyed that he knows so much. Suddenly, the system alerted him that his physique had exceeded its limits, and his speed increased by 1. With unwavering eyes, Ki Yun-yu advised Liga Hyun to give up before it was too late. His skills surge. Mana increases by 1. Skills level up. And instinct control reaches 5 out of 6, emanating immense power. Kieunu de Claris, Liga Hyun's de Mise. He gripped his celestial sword and unleashed the azure destruction stream slash towards her, cleaving a path before Liga Hyun and erupting in a cloud of dust. In the end, only his power remained. Liga Hyun was likely gone for good. Witnessing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and Harong praised Yoonbi's skills as top-notch, but Yoonbi humbly denies it, saying she couldn't have done it without everyone's support. And Harong thanks Min of the family for stepping in. Hearing this, Aaron is annoyed that he calls her that since she has her own name, while Hanoan watches the group with a mix of helplessness and amusement, smiling sincerely, ignoring the bickering. She tells Kyun-yu that he did well, but Hanoan seems to have noticed something and looks puzzled. Kyun-yu is staring in one direction, and when questioned, it dismisses it, making her suspicious. Gazing at the withered black corpse, the two girls continued to discuss the absence of a soul stone within. Its whereabouts remained a mystery, and Lisa shared their confusion, sensing the absence of demonic energy in the vicinity. Meanwhile, Arin stands beside Kyunu, dismissively waving her hand, calling Liga Hyun a coward for fleeing before death. Kyun-yu remained silent, displeased by Liga Hyun's ability to escape, even in a game. Then, a bright smile spreads across his face, knowing that no matter how far Liga Hyun runs, she must return to the portal to connect with her main body. Knowing this, he informs everyone to assist him, as he will now pursue Liga Hyun. Meanwhile, she's desperately fleeing in the form of a rabbit. Liga Hyun resenting having to run in such an unglamorous body, without the rabbit's soul. She can't be complete, and will lose her soul stone. Liga Hyun, though bitter, was forced to accept this imperfect, ugly form to escape, and soon approached the gate just as Kyun-yu predicted. She needed to pass through to send information and care for her main soul. She regrets focusing on Kyun-yu. Liga Hyun is now determined to leave quickly and prepare to deal with him. Suddenly, the figure of a dark-haired girl appears under the space-time gate, seriously asking if this rabbit is Liga Hyun. The girl floats up and knocks away Liga Hyun's rabbit form, who is furious to see the spirit envoy of her father's family. Suddenly, Liga Hyun looks surprised in one direction. It was Kyun-yu, now appearing with a sword in hand, looking quite impressive. Upon seeing her, his face was both gleeful and cold, as if he'd struck gold, and without a word, Kyun-yu immediately unleashed the 12th form of the Beast King's sword style, the Lion's Sorrow. As the blade threatened to take her life, Liga Hyun couldn't help but acknowledge his strength, impressed that he'd made it all the way here, and she relished the fight. Then, a compliment escaped her lips, directed solely at him, leaving Kyun-yu wide-eyed in surprise. After a mere 5 seconds of shock, he remembered his mission, and with a swing of his sword, sent Liga Hyun to meet her ancestors. A blinding light illuminating the sky. With Liga Hyun's clone captured, the chaos finally subsided, and Kyun-yu turned to thank Unsun's father for his help, introducing himself to her. Unsun, yawning, replies that she's going to get some sleep. The long and dangerous 5th round has finally come to an end, and the system displays a message that the test is over. Any further duels after the test will result in penalties, and all participants are to submit their papers and receive instructions from the examiners outside the gate. Cut to the headmaster's office. Meanwhile, the headmaster, impressed by Kyun-yu's abilities, saw no reason not to take him on as a student. Your performance in rounds 4 and especially 5 was truly remarkable. Kyun-yu realizes the headmaster made the test so difficult. As she prepared the 4th round, her gaze sharpens as she wonders how he recognized Liga Hyun's clone, sensing he knew she was a monster all along. Sensing her doubt, he vowed never to reveal the truth, vaguely attributing his insight to a trick question. One lie begets another, and he explained that the rank 2 monster he faced before only acted on command, so he guessed a queen was pulling the strings. And then he met a gold-ranked student who acted like she was controlling it, and among the queens, those who can disguise themselves are Liga Hyun. So he just speculated. The headmaster wondered if she should believe him, and he said yes. The headmaster agreed to consider it later, reminding him that this was not something to be shared, as it could endanger the students involved. However, as a reward for eliminating the fiend and protecting the other students, all participants in this battle will receive adequate compensation, and the principal then reveals a shimmering, rainbow-colored gem, continuing to explain that Li Gahyung's soulstone will be given to him, but for safety, the headmaster will hold on to it for now, assuring him he'll receive something of equal value. Seeing the stone, Kyunyu's face falls, already knowing he won't get the soulstone. He then wondered if the reward could be in the form of an upgrade item like the June character or a currency exchange. As soon as he asked, the headmaster just smiled and asked what kind of swordsman he was. Kyunu accepts, and the headmaster presents him with a ring bearing a blue gem, wishing him continued success, the Ring of Purity, imbued with the power of the light mage Sohyun, capable of purifying impurities in the wearer's energy and enhancing its efficiency. Its effect when energy is below 80. The ring increases it by 4 and reduces energy consumption by 20% for all equipped skills of level 8 or lower. The test concludes, and after a feast, Kyunyu and the others return home. Hanoan, standing behind him, wondered what he was smiling about. He simply clenched his fist, revealing the ring, and explained that he was happy to have received this from the headmaster. It would enhance his energy efficiency, replacing the soulstone. Seeing this, Hanoan happily followed suit, praising and congratulating him. After passing through the gate of space where the children were born, he bid everyone farewell and returned home. Kyunyu and Hanoan, each with a suitcase, prepared to return home. When he mentioned the family gathering and invited her to join them for a meal, Hanoan is surprised by this turn of events. As Kyunyu takes Hanyun's hand, a vision of their younger selves intertwining with the present, reminding him of the first time he brought her home. Their younger and older selves are similar, save for height and size. Kyunyu is overjoyed to invite her home, and together, they become allies to prevent the world's collapse. She was as shy as ever, blushing as he took her hand and led her home. Together, he and Hanyun will overcome any obstacle to prevent the world's collapse, and his first step is to meet as many people as possible at the Jeomgang Academy, including Han Byun. Kyunyu eagerly anticipates the stories yet to unfold. As a blush creeps across their faces amidst an unspoken tension, Kyunyu is Hanoan's childhood friend, and this scene concludes the story of becoming childhood friends with the mid-boss. Some time later, Lee Ga-hyun stands amidst shattered glass. Unable to accept the imperfection of her soul, she wonders why she was captured, refusing to believe she made a mistake, her vacant eyes hinting at a disturbed psyche. Elsewhere, footsteps echo with greetings. It seems to be Kyunyu, eager to explore his master's teachings, determined to make him proud, vowing to become a skilled hunter as he knocks on a door. Inside, a white-haired woman holding a roster invites him in. It's the headmaster, who says the school is honored to have him at Jeomgang Academy. Kyunyu looked much more mature now, and he would return one day,